Evening. This is a call to order for the Lake Mills Parks Board meeting of May 12th, 2025. It is now 5:30. And we have agenda call to order, the roll call, Parks and Forestry Director's report from Eric, and then a correction and or approval of Parks Board meetings of 14 April. 5 is other public comments, including emails. And then new business, discussion and review of the City Council Resolution 2519, Sandy Beach Recreational Developments. Discussion and recommendations regarding the 2026 Parks Fee Schedule Review. 7 is announcements, and 8 is create next meeting agenda items. 9 will be the next meeting. It's Monday, June 9th, 2025, and adjourn at 10. So, roll call. Anita, would you go first, please?
Anita Martin here.
Tim Sprecher here.
Jacob Slobby present.
Mary Schmager here.
Mike Niesman here.
All right, thank you. Third on the agenda, Parks and Forestry Director's report from Eric Schreiner.
All right, I'll keep this fairly brief, but there's a couple things that I would like to go over, at least stuff that has been developed since the publishing of this. We did actually have vandalism at Bartles Beach. There was a decent amount of spray painting that was actually done to the wooden footbridge next to Ferry Drive. So at this point, we're going to remove it. Nothing else that we have found has been vandalized, which is thankful. Just keep a watchful eye, though, as much as possible, and my staff will be doing the same to make sure we don't have any recurring vandalism. Other than that, staff has been extraordinarily busy. We did have our first summer seasonal employee start today. We're waiting for the rest of them to start, but it will be after Memorial Day. So the next 2 weeks are going to be heavily focused on Memorial Day preparations and property maintenance. We did have the Arbor Day presentation celebration for the 4th grade class. 106 students were there. From what I could tell, it was received very, very well, and it's something that we'll be doing in future years. Memorial Park, we're going to try to finish it prior to next week. It is going to be dependent on if there's any hiccups or anything like that, like weather-dependent things that happen regarding maintenance for the next 2 weeks. Like I said, we are doing all of our Memorial Day preparations, so we are going to try to get it finished prior to Memorial Day. If for some reason we were behind on property maintenance, it would be immediately after that week. I'll be doing a public notification on that when it is finished. Kayak rentals will be in place after Memorial Day pending the May 20th City Council meeting, where we will plan to extend that lease for the kayak rentals also to the mill pond. Other than that, is there any questions that I have? I'll try to keep it fairly brief.
Eric, I have a question. What has yet to be finished at Memorial? Is it just the grass seed? And
Grading,
like
perimeter, stuff like that. There's a couple other things that need to be finished, like retorquing. So what will happen is the actual playground installers will come back, retorque everything to correct tensions and basically make sure everything's all set. But the final is just going to be staff time associated with regrading and seeding.
What is the drone footage project?
So on our city website, we have banners on there, and what those banners are pretty pictures of the parks and the city in general. Drone footage is going to be like a live slideshow of all of the parks within the city and just some general things around the city. I think it looks really attractive, and when you do click on a park on our city website, you would also see drone and aerial footage of our parks. So that'll be on there. Hopefully midsummer is when we'll do that, when everything's all leafed out and pretty at the parks.
Could you tell us what the young men's group is about? I guess if that was discussed before, I must have missed it. Thank you.
Nope. So this is a new group that was formed by a couple teachers and a couple people at the elementary school. What this is an after-school program looking to teach hands-on skills, handyman-type skills, things that may not be available to younger students or young men nowadays. For instance, they actually had one at the fire department, I think it was during March, where they got to see like fire department equipment, learn how the fire department dresses, operates, what the equipment is used for. So it's teaching like some vocational skills and hands-on type work for them. What we'll be doing is like some general tree care, grounds maintenance type stuff, educating some of the people in that group.
Eric, regarding that, is there any way, or was there discussion of calling it Young Citizens Group or something like that? So it was.
There isn't an official name as far as I know. Currently, right now, that's what they're referring it to as. I don't think it has a true official name, or if it is open to people of other genders or anything like that. I'm not quite sure. But it was advertised to me as Young Men's Group is just kind of the working title. Like I said, this is a brand new group that started. I think they've only had 1 or 2 meetings so far.
I just wouldn't want to exclude any young women, young girls that would be interested in
Yeah.
the same things, so,
I don't think that's their intent, but
right, but,
yeah, I'm not sure what their official name is moving forward or if they have one.
yeah, okay. But yeah, it's a great idea, so thank you.
I have a question. When, or what is the game plan for Sandy Beach swim ropes and getting that all pulled together? I noticed there were
Today.
quite. Oh, it was today?
Yep.
Okay, because I just noticed over the weekend, quite a few boats had like pushed up onto the beach and a lot of people were swimming while those boats were there. And I was thinking about the safety conversation we had.
Yep.
And good to know,
That's-
thank you.
That's another one of the things that we have to do for parks preparations, but that was done today.
And the swim piers that are at the end of the city streets, the city, what do you call them, the city?
Street end piers,
Street, yes, they look great.
awesome.
And I noticed a lot of people on them already. This was such a beautiful weather. We were fortunate to have this past weekend,
Yep.
and they were very busy, and they look wonderful.
Good. So those are installed. The only other one that has to be installed yet is the swim pier at Sandy Beach. That'll be done this week.
Nicely done, thank you, Eric. Any other questions regarding the facilities and ground director's report? If not, let's move to agenda item number 4, correction and/or approval of Parks Board meeting minutes from 14 April. Andy, do you want to begin that? Any comments?
I think they look good as printed, so I would move to accept them as printed.
A second?
No comments? Great.
I love them.
Good on you. I just saying because I was not here, so. So we have 4-0 to
Oh,
approve.
approve, yes.
Thank you. All right. Then moving on to, thank you. So moving on to number 5, we've got the other public comments, including emails. Guests, please state your name and address and your business.
Good evening. My name's Randy Anderson. I'm at 205 Woodland Drive, which is the Woodland Beach Resort. I've been following the development of the park ever since that first Mead and Hunt report. I don't know how many years ago. I was going to look, but it's a lot of time. Our property is right on the fence line with Sandy Beach Park and right there at the lake. So we're a very close neighbor to the park, so we've got a lot of interest, which explains my presence here today. Thank you for allowing me to participate. I wanted to just follow up perhaps on the email that I sent, explain a little bit. Thank you for allowing me to tag along on the working session. The ideas presented there, I think, were very helpful to me as I kind of put things together. The idea of moving the volleyball courts back away from the beach and flipping the concession stand and the bathroom, I thought really worked to maximize the space to free up beach space along the lakefront. Great idea. I'm not taking any credit for that. That was somebody on the board, Jacob. I think it might have been you suggesting that. So I do want to highlight 2 things that I noticed. I'm hate to say it, but I'm somewhat of an expert on the east side of the park because as we look at our kitchen window, everybody's right there picnicking, enjoying themselves. So frankly, it's good people watching to see what's going on over there. But you notice that families are setting up in the shade, cooking out there all day. I mean, we'll see people set up at 9 a.m. and they're there till 5 or 6 p.m. So they're not in the sun. So one of the things that was talked about on Thursday was, expanding the beach, removing of trees, and I understand we need to remove some trees. I want to just emphasize that shade is really a valued commodity out there on the beach. So I would just encourage the maintaining of any grass or shade, even if we have to plant more trees to create shade. Then the other thing I want to talk about just real quickly is the piers. I like the idea of moving, first of all, everyone, I think is in agreement, try and maximize beach space. To me, and we've followed the water quality reports over the years, the water quality is generally always worse on the west side, closer to the launch, than it is on the east side, closer to Woodland Beach. So to me, it makes sense to put more boats over in the, where the water's a little bit less quality and preserve the higher quality water for swimming. So I like the idea of pushing the piers over there. Combining them maximizes the lakefront access. I would encourage, in my plan there, I pushed it out as opposed to kind of left and right. If you take a look at a Google map aerial, you can see that a lot of the private piers along even further east of Woodland go further out than the city pier goes. So I don't think that by extending it out, you're going out an unreasonable distance. You're going out a consistent distance with other piers in the area. And then finally, Jacob, I'm not trying to brown nose you here, but you did also mention slips. If the water's too deep out there, I think slips is a great idea. Plus, if you're on the beach, slips, looking out at boats sitting in the water versus boats on a lift, it's visually more appealing to have the boats in the water. It's less disruptive. So I think it's another good idea to consider slips. So that's it. I appreciate the time that you allowed me here and present my thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. Any questions for our presenter? Yes, sir.
I will say that Randy provided that drawing in PDF to all of you guys as well. I did print it out, so you guys should have a representation of it. I think that was actually well reflected from some of the stuff we talked about at the work session last week. So we can also use that as a bit of a working document.
Yeah, and when I printed like 5 copies and cut and paste and then taped, and so everything should be in the same scale. It's not like I shrunk the volleyball courts or anything. Hopefully, it's all in the proper scale.
Thank you. And just for reference for people that aren't aware, on the last Thursday, there was a working meeting that would be, that information I believe is available on the city website. So thank you for being here and following up on it.
Just
Yes,
want to
Mike.
emphasize the thanks. It really was nice to have you there and the input you've given us here. Appreciate it.
All right, any other public comments, including emails?
I had 2 phone calls. One, another parent contacted me about potentially putting a basketball court over the volleyball court at Fayetteville Park. The second one, a citizen contacted me, and they really, really would like to see a written plan for Christmas decorations.
Okay. And that's going to Eric, or is that in
That
your
would be
realm?
one of the future agenda items when Hope presented it a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
So I would anticipate the June meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other comments? Mary?
Oh, I think we all got correspondence also from another citizen who joined us on Thursday. So I received that email with some ideas or comments. And then I wanted to say thank you to all of the small number of people who came out on Thursday to take a walk and hear the conversation. And so several that did reach out with some ideas. So super appreciate that.
Thank you. Mike? I had someone comment when I showed them the proposals, and I think it sounds like you worked it out about flipping the concessions and such, because they looked and said, that seems like you're doing a lot of walking and such, so it sounds like that might be if taken care of. But otherwise, they thought the planned proposals looked as an improvement. The other question that they had is, when they have that list for the food trucks, how is that a future agenda item as to how that's going to work and who's going to be down there and all that? Was that discussed?
That's not at that point yet. We're not at that point as far as who's going to be down there or anything. This is just conceptual at this point, so who's going to be vending and how that's all going to work would be much after
Okay.
We're providing a venue or a space is basically what we're doing at
And
this
I don't
point.
want to put, misconstrue this person's concerns, but they also asked if there's going to be alcohol available.
We can talk about it, I suppose, when we go into the discussion of it. But there is one retainer. Well, I suppose I'll just say it now. There is one alcohol license on retainer for Sandy Beach that the city actually has possession of. So there would be one available person to vend alcohol down there if that's a direction we'd like to go for it.
Okay, yeah, that's the only public comments that I had.
Can I just tack on to that? What is our timeline here? What is your rough estimate, minimum and maximum time?
To be determined at this point.
TBD, okay.
Yeah.
So
to-
years.
To be determined. Nothing is set in stone at this point. I would anticipate some engineering to actually happen within this year. I do know that your guys' deadline, at least for interior park renovations, was August. So I would just definitely emphasize on meeting the August deadline, and that could influence, potential timeline for engineering and design.
Did you add a comment?
No, I didn't receive anything, but I also wanted to thank everyone. Well, I received an email from Randy, and he had sent it to, I think, to all of us, which was helpful to review beforehand. And I wanted to also thank everybody who showed up last week, Thursday. That was, to me, important. Thank you.
So, any others? If not, let's move to agenda item number 6, new business. A, discussion review of City Council Resolution 2519, Sandy Beach Recreational Developments. And there's a Sandy Beach concept revised, I'm going to believe the R stands for, 2025 from May 2nd. And so we can maybe label that as item, what?
As far as, if I would be able to make one comment quick.
Yes.
Tonight, I know there's a lot of stuff that was talked about at the work session. What would be ideal for me is if we get some absolutes that the board is good moving forward with. Ideally, I would like to have enough time to make like a Plan A and a Plan B concept. Well, ideally a Plan A, and have a revised concept for you for the next meeting. But that will take some time, so hopefully we can come to some conclusions this evening and hopefully give me enough information to work off of for next meeting.
Okay, and so just for purposes of tracking, this is the item I'm speaking of, R, and I'm going to just label that as Exhibit A, just so we, when we're asking questions, we know which ones we're speaking of.
Are you looking at, this is the new one we got today.
That was Randy's.
I'm looking at the one that says R on it.
Okay, so that's gonna be Exhibit A.
Volleyball's here, the new one. The volleyball's right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
The Randy one is.
all right, so I just want to be clear.
So you're trying to say A and B, well, you're trying to make sure we're all on the same page. So keep going, Tim. What would you like to
Yes.
call them, so we're all on the same
Yes,
page?
that's exactly what I'm looking for. So, so the one that says R, that's on the landscape horizontal, we're going to do that, that's Exhibit A.
A,
All right,
okay.
so that's A. And then the one that Jacob just showed, which is what, an update to, based on
That
comments from the
is,
Thursday?
that was actually provided from Randy. So he was there at the meeting, listened to a lot of the comments that were made at the work session. So I think he actually did a really great job of putting some of the stuff together on what was talked about on Thursday. So that would be another working document.
RA Exhibit, so Randy Alexander,
Sure. Yeah, we can,
so let's do that. So that's, but that would be Exhibit B, and that will be from Randy. All right, thank you. I'm sorry?
Yeah, you're in the minutes now.
Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not so good. Better be rich than famous. All right, so let's go to the next item that we might be looking at. So these are the two that were provided initially on the agenda that was sent from Lisa Vincent. So I'm looking at one that is, this R is the same as the other R, is that correct? It's not blown up?
that's the exact same.
Yeah, so it's just not, it's just a different
That's A.
scale.
Yep.
Okay,
All right,
okay,
so that, we can just put to the side, this R. And then this one that I have that has the, more of a blow-up of the swim beach and such.
That's the small version of the back.
That's on the back.
That's the obverse of
All
Exhibit A.
right,
So
so
you
then,
guys set that aside.
so that'd be side A and B on R. correct? So
Yeah.
Exhibit A, and this is side 1 of 2, and this is A side 2. I think as we go through all this stuff, we're gonna be wanting to make sure we're on the same document and making discussion. So thank you for your patience with that. And thank you again, Randy, for the updating. Let's move to, I think that makes all the agenda items for this discussion noted, correct? R being A and.
Would we like to enter this in by any chance for, because they're all movable pieces if we have different ideas?
Most certainly. So what are we gonna call that, and how are we gonna capture our movements and discussion on it?
I'd say Jacob's masterpiece.
Or C?
It's called Jason's
There you go.
Masterpiece.
There we go.
It gets a C? That's not so fair.
Well, I think as we have dialogue around what our perspectives are on A and B and what we like or don't like, perhaps C becomes a variation, moving pieces and parts as we redesign.
So this.
And so that becomes C or D, I don't know how many
Yeah.
variations we end up with, and then try to get to 2 per Eric's request.
Just for the record, I walked the park a couple times, a couple laps. I tried to measure it with a tape wheel. I cut this thing as accurate as I could possibly cut it. 1 inch equals roughly 30 feet. I'm not entirely sure if these Exhibit A and B are to scale. This is basically to scale,
Okay,
as close as I can physically make it,
all right.
It's-
And that's noted on your legend as to the scale there,
right there.
and the north is noted on the map also?
North is not noted.
All right, so let's note north, because Randy said we got east and west, and
Well,
some people are directionally
kind of north.
challenged. Not looking at it, but I'm averting my eyes. All right, so we will, Jacob's document that which we'll use, we'll label that as item C, all right? So, nicely done, Jacob. So that is, any other comments or such as we move forward in our discussion review? So it sounds like, Eric, maybe you would want to make a comment regarding your work here? What you have as far as the green things are what the
That's,
different structures?
Jacob made that.
Oh, I'm sorry, what did I say? Jacob, then,
yeah.
yes.
So what I would say, and hopefully we can get some clarification or direction here, is if we could come to a mutual conclusion, what was liked, what was generally disliked, in regards to our work session last week. Like, it sounds like what I could tell is that the narrowing of the beach but extending it was generally favored. The location of the playgrounds, the flipping of the concession shelter and restrooms, or moving the boat lifts from the east side to the west side. That's kind of the stuff that I'm looking for, and hopefully we can come to some conclusions on that tonight.
I would agree.
That's pretty much all I got, but it's up to you guys on how you want to pursue it, but that would help me quite a bit.
So, in that you were the chair that evening, Anita, do you want to lead that discussion in that? Do you want to be over here so you can see the map?
I'm not all that terribly comfortable with that, but.
Well, what would you like to do?
Well, can I ask a question first?
Absolutely.
Just because I am a little concerned with the comment that, and you had mentioned this, Eric, when we were together on Thursday, that the renderings on these papers, so both Randy's A and B, are possibly not drawn to scale. So I'm wondering if we should at least look to see, if we're starting with A or B, if we could just kind of say, if we're resonating that they kind of look like, we like aspects of them, can we put it on this and make sure we know that it'll work before we get too far along? Because I'm like, oh, it's intriguing moving the volleyball back. We talked about it, now I see it there, but will it really work?
I did check with that. The
Okay.
ones that I was referencing that may not be to scale was the shelters. That was the
Oh,
thing that
okay.
kind of flagged it. That was actually a mislabel. So they should actually be fairly accurate to scale listed within the drawing.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so then I'm good.
So with that, we're talking about item A, side 2, as far as
Yes.
being mislabeled?
There was just a couple labels on the sides of the shelters specifically, regarding square footage.
Yeah, yes, thank you. No, it's fine.
I'm gonna have to borrow your attachment, Mike.
Because right now, both of them, for what I'm seeing, they've got shelter 900 square feet, shelter 900 square feet, and that's only 2 shelters I'm seeing.
900 square feet was just not supposed to be a label, so we haven't decided any actual, true size at this point, so hopefully this kind of makes sense. But what I was going off of was the existing shelter, which Jacob, can you remind me what the large shelter was, if you were down there?
4,000.
What was that?
The large shelter is listed at 4,000.
The one we were actually at the park, though.
Oh, it was 1,500 square feet. It was 30 by 50.
So that would be what I was working with. So 1,500 square feet was my anticipated size of a large shelter.
And which one is that, Eric, then? You're talking about. the
That's not
concession
listed on
shelter?
here. That's
not on.
existing.
Okay.
Is that this one here? No, I'm sorry. 1,500 would be,
So there's ones that are labeled 900 square feet. That would be our restroom and our 2 shelters down there. 1,500 square feet is what our current large shelter is listed at, and that would be the size of like the restroom. So these 900 square feet are actually smaller than anticipated. But scale-wise, everything else would be in play. It was all based off of parking lots. We have our distances within the food truck plaza. Things that we don't know yet is like what we would like to make those actual sizes for, but things like the volleyball courts, things that have required dimensions to them, those are to scale.
All right, so just for edit purposes, the ones that, for the shelters, say 900 feet, we just cross those off.
Yeah. We're looking at general layout, stuff like that on them.
Okay.
So I have two recommendations on maybe how we could walk through this. One of them is kind of like we did in the park and walk from one part of the park and just walk through from west to east. So it would be left to right, and because I'm right-handed, so that kind of fits for me. Or the other option, it would be to talk about some of the criteria that we have. Eric, you had shared some. We all have, or I'd say criteria or objectives that we have all discussed, and walk through and say if the objective is to have X, like sand recreation, and that was volleyball, and there could be other sand recreation, what would that look like and where would we best put it? So we could do it by 2 different ways, either walking through, and I don't know how others might feel, but that's in my thoughts, how might be an organized way to walk through and then check off. If we all like it, Eric, then that gives you the, kind of what you're looking for, the low-hanging fruit or slam dunk items that we might be able to push forward quicker. So I don't know what,
It sounds like a great idea, Mary. I'm just wondering though, given what you have said and what Randy has presented, are we going to use your west to east walkthrough using Randy's Exhibit B as our
Yes.
our framework?
Yeah.
All right, so all right, Yeah,
yeah,
based on the
B is,
discuss-
yeah, B's kind of what we kind of all
yes.
brainstormed.
So let's just use Exhibit B, Randy's mock-up, and that will be what we're talking of as we go through the west to east look. Is that agreed upon? All right, let's do that then. So.
One question, is that available online?
No, it's not.
Okay, we probably need to get that scanned in.
Can we
so
put it
that,
on that machine over there?
I mean, just eventually, it doesn't have to be up
Oh.
there now, but I think it should be available for anybody who wants to tune in and look at this.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Yeah, I
As long as, does everybody have a copy? As long as you guys are working off the same copy, I think we should be okay then.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all have the same copy, but I think you're saying anybody who is coming to see the recording won't know what we're talking about.
It should be part of the visual record.
Yeah, we'll put it,
yeah.
yeah.
And given that, is there a way, like, I don't know, but could we take like a photo of it now to be captured somewhere, or is that not?
I can have it uploaded as an attachment afterwards.
Okay, all right, so thank you. So just to be clear, we are on Exhibit B, and it's not on here, but north is still going to be at the top of the page, and west is on the left-hand side of the page, and east on the right-hand side. So, Mary, I'm looking at this, and it sounds like all the things you talked about really quickly is more trees, and we've got the, so let's kind of move from there. We're starting at the far, our property is where the first green trees are. Is that city property?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so,
I think that yellow is the boundary, is it not? On the east?
of the west?
Well,
On the west is gonna be Sandy Beach Road, and then the yellow boundaries is actually our parcel lines. Generally, I can go over some of the things that I see as differences from the initial concept versus Randy, if you would like, and I can kind of describe them. So what I see looking at Randy's, it would be the coupling of the boat lifts, so they're all on the west side of the beach, and instead of extending along the beach front, they're extended further into the lake. So there's like kind of like a double-decker boat lift pier style. The next one would be the prioritization of green space area. I'm gonna leave it very vague like that. Just generally providing more green space with more trees in the park. Along that would be the narrowing of the beach. When I say narrowing, that is the distance from basically the water to the interior of the park. And the widening of the beach, so it is the entire beachfront that was like in the initial concept. There are three other things, which would be the moving of the volleyball courts away from the beachfront and finding a designated spot for them. I will have to do some tailoring on where they fit best, but that's generally what I saw as the pulling of the volleyball courts away from the beach itself.
Eric, can I just pause you for a moment?
Yes.
Just so we're talking numbers, so people have a concept. So, and Jacob, if you have measured this stuff, right now, what is the current depth of the beach, width, depth, whatever you want to call it?
Approximately 80 feet is what I
80
thought it
feet.
was.
The deepest part is 85 feet.
Yeah.
Next to the bait shop,
Yep.
and that was the deepest part.
So it's approximately 80 feet.
All right, so about 80 feet, and now the proposal for more shade and such, about how wide, deep is the beach going to be?
I would say that's up to your guys on what you kind of think would be appropriate distance.
I feel 60 feet for the entire length of the beach, 50 to 60. So 50 feet on the east side. If we remove that asphalt, that's 50 feet from that grass to the water. The back of the bait shop is 60 feet from the water, to give you an idea. So the south side of the bait shop is 60 feet from the water. And basically, the boat launch is exactly 60 feet to the water.
Okay,
So just to give you a frame of reference,
so so just for clarity, we're getting less sand, but more, not, there's still gonna be all the same public space, just to be less sand and more shade.
You would probably be gaining beachfront, honestly.
so to
So, yeah, you would be
the side of
gaining.
the boat or the bait shop, you're gonna gain a lot of sand. So you'll.
Tim, there's a thing in the middle there where the bait shop is and all that stuff. If you look at Exhibit A, and that would go away and become.
Right, okay.
Yeah, one contiguous beach, so you're getting more beach front, but you're getting less beach depth.
Yeah, so I think that's a great idea, and just so people understand that we're not taking any beach away, we're actually,
Yeah, you're gaining beach.
Continuous.
And it's one of those things, like Mary and I were talking, if you do this, what happens afterwards? If you do this, you would have the opportunity to plant more trees and add green space.
yes.
So it's a give and take on both of them. So that's the beach. I did write down 50 and 60 feet for both those areas respectively. The next was the
Wait,
flipping.
guys, are you asking us to give you feedback along the way, or are you going to read them all and then we're going to go back?
I'm just going to read on what I see the differences with these concepts.
Okay.
The next was the flipping of the locations of the concession shelter and the restrooms. So that's what I see as being the main differences between our initial concept, Exhibit A, versus Randy's one. And I think it captured the comments from Thursday very well. But if you guys want to provide any feedback and talk about those changes, that would be great.
I do have a question. I know that Randy mentioned, and I thought it was a good point, that we want to be having the alignment, the positioning of the volleyball courts so that the sun isn't in the eyes. So the way that it's currently drawn on Exhibit B. According to what your measurements were, Jacob, and your plan there, would there be enough room for four, the way that this is currently drawn?
It would be tight, so I did cut out a 4 volleyball court versus a 3.
I
Also have 4 single volleyball courts. The 4 volleyball courts would fit. It would be on the tighter side. And after talking to various volleyball players last year, they did 3 courts. They made do with it. But you obviously can look at it and compare.
Could I just, it sounds like we're all sort of in agreement, though, on one beach, 50 to
Yep.
60 feet wide.
Yep.
I think we can put that as,
I agree.
And the playground, I think.
we
would
want.
kind
And the
of,
playground.
well, I mean, at
And that
one at a
would be-
time, if we just
Yep.
say,
Yeah.
okay,
The
the beach, so
the
we're
beach
all good
is-
with that,
Yep.
Yep.
right? And are we all good with moving the boat lifts and stuff in one spot to the west?
Is it, before we get to that, is it impossible to put, I agree to move them to the west. Is it impossible to put a small slip west of the boat launch to hold maybe 5 boats?
Potentially, I'd have to look at the setbacks for them. I was thinking kind of the same thing too, if we'd be able to get a small section over there. Let me check with our stormwater drainage outlet there, would be the one thing. But that was one of my thoughts too, is if we can space them out a bit.
I love the idea of a slip.
Yeah.
I do agree that
It is gonna be
takes
tight.
an eyesore away,
Yep.
because obviously the boats will
Yep.
be lower. But if you put maybe 6 to the east side of the boat launch, maybe 20 to the right side, and you could just, I don't know if it's possible to do one straight pier with all
That was
slips.
what that's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah, the simplicity of it seems kind of worth looking at, but.
You show me. Thank you very much. I'm just having, I know pretty well what this is. So where are we talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, could we put 6,
Looking at that one, it would be
and then we'd have exactly 27.
Okay, thank you.
It would be tough to do that on the west side because we do have neighboring property owner ones that go into that area as well. I'll look into it and see if we have the space and setbacks for it from these. So I'll update it at least and see if we have.
Yeah,
any
I just,
concept.
just a couple
Yeah.
of boats, if that's possible.
Don't the neighboring lifts kind of cross angle over into the front of the park?
That's actually what Randy just provided.
Oh, is that
me
what
here.
you just pointed out?
Yeah,
Randy?
so I am gonna have to do some measuring on that and see if we would have the space for it. If we can, I do like the idea of consolidating all of the boat traffic onto one side of the park.
Yeah, I like that too.
And with that comment, I'm looking at on the west, that sort of black, is that where the kayaks are now?
No.
What,
No, kayaks are currently on the
Water.
east side of the park.
so what is this?
That's a stormwater drainage outlet.
Well, that's the outlet.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's all complete. So basically, everything on the exterior of the park has all been complete, everything
Okay.
associated with the, well, majority of it, but currently the kayaks are on the east side. In Exhibit A, you can see that meandering sidewalk that kind of goes to the east side boat lifts.
Yes.
If we remove the boat lifts on the east side and put them on the west side, I would retain that sidewalk that wraps around the playground and have that be the designated kayak location.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So kayaks you would have to the east.
Yeah. Again, the goal here being maximize swim space and beach space for swimmers. Totally consolidate motorboat traffic onto the west side, have non-motorized boat traffic on the east side.
Yeah, I think that minimizes potential for conflicts between the silent sports versus the motorboats. Yeah, nice.
And as I was thinking of, see, I was trying to challenge myself to not get caught in what we have now and what we, because we're inventing for the future. I don't know that our lake is conducive to this, but I know like up at Peninsula State Park, they have those water bikes that are really great exercise. You get out and you pedal out. So are there other non-motorized things that could be an add-on for a firm or the city to consider at some point in time? And that's, I think, a detail for down the road, but the location on that east side may be prime for that, given that all the
Location.
motors are on the west, and so all of the non-motor could pitch off here from the right, especially if we figure out, because that's also where everybody comes piling in. And we had talked about that with the safety issue. Everyone comes motoring in and they moor there to use to jump on the beach here. So we have to figure that corner out sometime.
Yep. I agree, though. I do like having the east side being non-motorized and west side being motorized.
Yeah, and I would suggest that we look at the things that Barry talked about, plus paddle boats, all sorts of things that people can use the water for and still be silent sports sort of a thing. So, nicely done. So, continue on, please, Eric, if there's anything else to add to your,
I think that's pretty much it. So that's actually a lot of direction for me, honestly. I'm glad you guys have come to those conclusions. So even coming to some conclusions helps substantially. Where I see some potential issues is it retaining those four courts and also keeping them in this area. It is very close to the parking lot. But the layout a lot will come into play once this is actually rendered to scale and I bring some of these updates to the planner. But that was one of my concerns with retaining those four courts.
Eric, kind of back to what you were talking about, of flipping the concessions and bathrooms. I was kind of brainstorming today, and I know you want two separate buildings for concessions and bathrooms. Is it possible to have two separate buildings under one roof? Like in theory, like I have that handout that I gave everyone of a single.
Yeah,
pitch, small shelter.
your footprint's gonna be large though. In order to provide as much restroom amenities as we need, it's gonna be a pretty sizable shelter.
Yeah.
My thought here,
So,
kind of trying to limit them a little bit in different areas of the park, so we don't have one very, very large shelter being both a concession shelter and a restroom, if that makes sense.
okay, because yeah, basically I was hypothetically I was doing a 40 by 100 foot footprint, and I was contemplating this idea of concessions on one side. Basically, picture a block on one side, a block on the other, a single pitch roof that has a second floor deck. I really like the idea of getting elevated, sitting up on a platform overlooking the lake, and ultimately the footprint could be smaller if you have two floors. And if we have a very continuous theme to the beach of these single pitch roofs, I think they're simple to build, they're aesthetically pleasing, they open up to the water. And ultimately, but if you could, because I think you said you wanted to heat one of the buildings in the winter and not one of the other ones, they'd be separate, they'd have separate utilities. And I know we want to have outdoor showers, and then, so if you picture like a 25-foot by 40-foot concession stand, it's 1,000 square feet, it's roughly what we were talking about. 25-foot by 40-foot restroom, roughly what we were talking about. The 40-foot wall of the restroom could have the outdoor showers, which is what we were talking about. In between, you'd have roughly 2,000 square feet of picnic-type area. And on the second floor, you'd basically have a 4,000 square foot deck that's open on all four sides. You can see the sunset, the lake. You have air flowing through it constantly.
What?
And it'd be shaded.
What I can do, let me take some of those measurements. I would like to have that as an option within a rendering.
Yeah.
I like the idea, but I think that's something that we could bring, we could see what that footprint would look like on the concept. So I do like that idea, but I would like to see it within an additional rendering. So I'll do a rendering as we move through our updates here. I'll do one kind of the style that we have right now. I'll bank on having a second story rendered and stuff like that, but having a separate restroom shelter and a concession shelter, but then I'll also couple it, kind of like you said. But that will change our square
Just
footage.
basically off the top of my head, I didn't know if you'd want the concession stand to basically have a second floor possibly for storage, or if the second floor would just be a deck and.
Preferably a deck. I think that would
I
be
love
great.
the idea of a second floor deck, I
Okay.
mean, I know that the city really wants a restaurant, but if we're providing.
The citizens.
Yeah, the citizens
Citizens
would love.
wanted, that was their
would
number
love
one.
Restaurant, but if we're providing a place to eat, place to sit down, get a great view of the park and the lake, I think that's, we're not taking up more park space, we're just building
Yeah.
up.
So what I'm doing at this point is I am taking notes as we go through, basically bullet points that I'll be providing to the planner to add into a rendering. I like that idea though, and I think it's worth putting into a rendering to look and see what it's gonna look like.
Can I ask clarifying question on your concept? Where is, when you were mapping out, you'd have the building on one side, restrooms, and then it's connected with, then you have over here would be the concession pavilion or concession stand. Where is the ice skating rink in this scenario?
It would basically be where it is
middle?
on the.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, be in the.
No, it
No.
would be on the west side of it.
Okay,
So it would
it'd be on
basically,
the-
if you were looking at this exhibit B,
Okay,
you
B,
would
yep.
basically cross out the restrooms
On the
to
left,
the,
okay?
up to the left, cross that out, and then you consolidate it with the shelter. And then the restrooms would be there. The bottom floor of the shelter would be slightly smaller, but you'd have a second floor that is roughly,
Okay.
based on a 40 by 100 footprint, that's 6,000 square feet of picnic space, 1,000 square feet of restroom, and 1,000 square feet of concessions.
So is it, could I, if I take off the small restroom icon there, and so what you're kind of saying is the concession shelter, the little rectangle, put a little rectangle on the left would be your concession, you'd have some seating in the middle underneath, and then you'd have on the right would be the bathrooms, as an example, with the showers, and then it'd be connected with a platform over them. So it'd be one building in this rectangular shape, it would just be two.
Correct. And
Okay,
whether or
I'm
not-
visualizing what you're saying.
Yep.
Okay, that
And
would be
then
cool,
I
that's
kind of
interesting.
did
I
a
like,
childish drawing of what I envisioned.
well, you look great.
Thank you, thank you. But,
Stick
yeah, I picture something roughly
Okay.
20 feet on the, 20 feet tall on the short side of a single pitch roof, 25 to 30 feet tall on the front side, potentially
You wanna pass
retain
that around?
rainwater. Because if it's a single
Why
pitch
is it-
roof, I feel it's more cost effective than multi-tiered roof.
Open building.
And just for clarity, as we're talking, can we use maybe the Plaza Picnic Ice Rink as sort of like the center focal point? Because that's staying where it is.
Yep, that's definitely like your
Has to,
park
it's flat.
entrance.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's-
that would be a decorative area, picnic area, all that kind of
And it's
stuff.
flat there.
Flat.
You brought out the terrain was important there.
Right.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think for clarity for people listening, that we're talking, the Plaza Picnic Ice Rink is going to be there. And so when we're talking west of that ice rink or east of that ice rink, south of that ice rink, but that's sort of still going to be the focal point of the,
I would say it's very close to that idea. Just food for thought, if we are going to shorten the beach 25 feet, basically right there, we could slide it slightly closer to
Closer.
the lake.
Yep.
If that, so that it's not right on the parking lot, because we would be gaining 25 feet.
I would actually recommend that. If you recall, when we we're at the park, that the current location of the restroom has a pitch up to it.
Yeah.
If you do move it forward, kind of towards where the bait shack would be, or basically move it exactly where it's proposed now and closer to the beach, I would be more comfortable in meeting ADA requirements with that.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of trees in that area. It's actually fairly open in that area.
I counted 3.
Yeah.
Based on my estimation, if you were to do it. One of my thoughts is when we do this, like, obviously, we're gonna need to put sidewalks, and I am kind of the mentality that less is more. I think one sidewalk connecting the entirety of the west to the east
Yep.
is basically the main artery of the park is a good idea. So I would assume that the front of these buildings, the front of the plaza and the front of the concession stand would basically be on that sidewalk. So whether or not there'd be
Yep.
a sidewalk that connects, it goes sand, sidewalk, grass, I don't know, or if you'd want to have just grass directly to sand. So I don't exactly know, like, I want to put as little concrete down as possible, I guess would be my thought.
I do like the idea of moving that proposed shelter forward a little bit closer to the lake. That would be less grading requirements for it. So ideally, I don't have to make much topography changes at all. And I would be able to do that if we move it closer to the lake.
yeah, I think that's a great idea. And especially if you can take that Plaza Picnic Rink and, so you have, what, we're talking 20 feet, 34 feet? I think anything would be good.
Just
Yeah.
slightly closer,
Yeah.
better lake views if you have a second floor
Right.
deck, which I think
Right.
would be a game changer for the park.
Yeah. Oh, I do have somebody asked me, those lines, is that going to be a tent or is that what that,
No, those are string lights.
oh, string lights, okay, all right. Thank you very much.
So anything as far as some of these symbols that you see is like cross-hatched. You can see it's in the plaza area and the food truck plaza. That's like stamped decorative or dyed concrete or something like that. So if you see that brick shape.
Okay.
I do like the idea of moving that concession shelter, though. I'll move forward with that and having an updated rendering on it.
So what
And-
I also like about what Jacob is suggesting is it gives you then more freedom to figure out how to orient some of those volleyball courts. So you might be able
That was
to
gonna be my next
move your
question.
biking back over towards the parking, scooch them a little closer to the lake so they're not so close to the parking lot, but they're close to the lake, and then they won't be by the shelter. So we talked about the buffer volleyball a little bit, given, I would call it like a rec area. So if somebody wants to play cornhole or something and get some sand for rec, and that's the noisy part of the park where you wouldn't want to necessarily want to read your quiet book or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that would give, if you took that one restroom building out,
You'd have a little bit more flexibility.
It gives you more flexibility there, I
I
think.
agree.
And to do even 4 possibly.
Ideally, the bike parking is closer to the actual parking lot itself, and you'd be able to move the volleyball courts a bit interior of the park, and away from the parking lot, so those are good comments.
Maybe we should address the volleyball courts. That seems to be a major issue, decide whether we're going to okay with 3 or 4, because that would be a big deal for you, right?
Yeah, that one would.
And that's sort of independent, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. And so right now, if I'm hearing, they're designed for 4, and there are 4 there now. And the 4 is for meet the demand of the current people that play volleyball there during the summer, not weekend pickup. This is we need 4 because that's how many teams use that court. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we weren't losing any recreational opportunities. That was the next thing too. When this was designed, I didn't want to lose any, use what we had previously. There's a couple ways around this when I was thinking about it. You stagger league play. So instead of just Wednesday evenings, it could be Wednesdays and Thursdays. You could also install some auxiliary ones at another park. The way that I saw volleyball courts moving is if you guys kind of know the general direction or location you want them in the park, this would be one of those circumstances to where I would have a plan A and a plan B rendering, so you can see the difference in 4 courts versus 2 courts and where they lie in the park. Next expectation too is if we have green space available, we would be planting additional trees and everything too. So I think that would be appropriate to have an A and a B rendering with 2 versus 4 courts.
Well, and also if it's renderings, might there be 2 courts on where the present thing is moved to, maximize space between parking lots and whatever, and maybe 2 courts that are closer to the beach?
You could, yeah, you could. When it comes to tree preservation, they would primarily have to be, when we walk the park, they would definitely have to be in the west end. Just based on the trees and open space that we have available if you are to do that. But yeah, it's kind of up to you guys on how you would like to lay them out.
Because, Tim, we also talked about there was some lack of enthusiasm for having the volleyball courts adjacent to the sunbathing beach area just because of the noise and the balls being kicked out there. So wasn't that, am I not right? We kind of liked having a buffer.
So, well, luckily, like as a bartender, I try to talk to as many people as humanly possible about this.
Do you want to say where you 10 bar? You want us to have a plug here?
Tire Nina, it's a great place to be. Some of the thoughts were the ref whistles is kind of obtrusive. Errant volleyballs hitting kids or knocking drinks over was kind of a concern. And I talked to some people, I guess last year they went with 3 courts because there was a net issue on the 4th court, so they didn't even use the 4th court last year. So it seemingly is possible to get by with 3 courts. One of my thoughts on 3 courts is if you keep it kind of in the parking lot, potentially in the future, maybe there could be lights. I don't really want to see lights in the park, but if it's far enough away from the park, maybe lights are a possibility in the future.
Well, the other thing that, I'm sorry,
No, that was it.
you done?
Yeah.
That, what I'm looking at is use, and that the city volleyball teams are playing on Tuesday nights or Thursday nights or Wednesday nights. Is that correct?
I believe it's 2 days a week.
2 days a week. And so they know the drill, and it's not nearly the amount of people down on the beach itself on a Tuesday night or a Thursday night, whatever the nights are. So if these volleyballs are going to use as pickup games on these weekends, we could maybe even like close down those 2 that are closer to the beach, saying they aren't used on, if we're worried about noise and whistles and all that. But I think you could still have the 4 courts for use for recreation on those 2 nights or 3 nights that are there, and then on the weekends, pare it down to 2. Because I've been down there lots of times, and there's not everybody's using the volleyball courts on a Saturday or Sunday. So that might be a way of getting around the noise and,
Don't forget, we're making the beach a lot longer,
Yeah.
and so it gives people more place that they can, like, more terrain to sit in the sand, so they
Right.
don't have to, doesn't have to be piled in on the east, on the west side there either. I'd like to see us move them closer to the beach.
yeah, I just think
And
that
then,
would.
and then especially if now we put the concessions on the other side, I was worried about the original placement was right in front of a shelter and you have families or family reunion, whatever, and they were in a funny spot for how things would work, but I like them tucked over where we kind of have them in Exhibit B now. But I'd move them, I'd like to see them a little closer.
Yeah, and the
Water.
bike parking can be moved potentially.
Yeah, that would be ideally near to the parking lot, like the park entrance. One of the things though, for installing the volleyball courts, I definitely want to install permanent posts.
Yeah.
So these wouldn't be really movable or anything like that. Ideally, I wouldn't have to set up additional lines each week or anything.
Right.
So the expectation that these would be permanent courts.
Right, so but I think that the bike parking, and I think for us and for people like Randy and others, you don't want to be blocking the view to the lake. And so the bike parking is not going to block view to the lake, and the volleyball courts are not going to block views to the lake. So I think anything we do down that way, keeping it low profile, but having access for volleyball courts, I think is good.
Another thing that we discussed was potentially putting 2 at Sandy Beach and 2 at Rotary Park, and basically you play at a different park every week.
And I'm not in the leagues, but I'm thinking sometimes it's kind of a camaraderie thing, and having everybody down there, and especially going to the concessions and such. I think that's we can look at that, but I think that most people that are on these leagues would like to have them all be at the same spot.
Could I? Okay.
Can I ask
All
a
right,
que-
Anita has a question on Mary.
So, circling back, I think the second floor deck is a really great idea. And then, depending on how the configurations are, it sounds like four volleyball courts would be ideal, but 3 would be acceptable. Is that sort of the feedback you got, Jacob?
So basically, yeah, they operated on 3 this past year without issue. I know that I think a lot of people, everyone is unanimous saying they miss the old volleyball courts.
Okay.
But I think this is kind of one of those situations where you can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. And so it kind of, I don't want the park to feel confining, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess my thought is if it's too tight, or if putting 4 in would require less green space or taking, well, it wouldn't probably be taking more trees down, but if it's getting to look and feel too tight, I would personally like to see 3. That's my thought.
So for renderings, would it be safe to assume that in the next version I have it rendered for 3, or would you also like to have it rendered for 4?
I personally would like to have it for 4.
Okay, I'll do both and treat it as an A to B version.
And this goes back to Jacob's comment about you can't put toothpaste back in. And then if you're putting in these permanent poles and making them long-lasting, I think put them in, and then you've got them.
So just to so Mary and I are kind of looking at this little map here, so just to kind of give you a frame of reference, this point right here, where this piece of green paper is the corner of the boat launch. So that's where I started the green area assuming. So
Okay.
based on,
It's up here.
based on Exhibit B, this would be about right here.
Oh, that's why I was suggesting we move them
Yeah,
towards
and
the beach.
I
That's why I
agree
liked
with,
where
I
you have
agree
them.
with you, if we were to slide them towards the beach, then that would give you roughly, right now I measured out the existing grass between the asphalt and the sand. It's roughly 25 to 50 feet on the parking lot volleyball courts. So, and I assume aesthetically, you'd want basically a grass border around this. So if you put it 25 feet off the fence of the boat launch, I feel like that kind of fits. I do agree that on the image on Exhibit B, it should slide slightly towards the beach, almost and over that bike parking potentially. I like the idea of maybe having 2 separate bike parkings food for thought, like when we take my kid to the beach, we have his little burly stroller, and we have our stuff in there, so it's nice to be able to park that wherever you're gonna sit.
And that would be easy too. I mean, we would just change locations on like the sidewalks or near the parking lot.
Yeah,
so.
and I agree that I think there should be a bike parking where it is now for that, the west end, and I think there should be bike parking at the east end for the silent sports sort of places. And
Yeah,
I think that would give, people access to both sides of the park. Question from,
Can I?
go ahead.
Okay. So if we move the volleyball courts, as Mary and Jacob were sort of looking at, could we still angle them appropriately to avoid that real sunny aspect?
they would be the exact angle in which they are on Exhibit B. And, yeah, it's, so from the water to the corner of the boat launch parking is 430 feet. So, and each volleyball court is 50 feet wide when you account for the excess sand on each side of the volleyball court.
Okay, thank you.
So the only thing I would like to make sure that we have thought about when we move these volleyball courts, wherever they're going to be, so I'm just going to scooch them up on your exhibit here, closer to the sand. What is the traffic pattern for people who are going to the slips? So when somebody's coming, they park in the parking lot, and then they're going to bring their coolers and whatever. I just want to make sure we just think through the traffic pattern. I'm a big usability person. I walk through thinking I'm whoever, like now I'm on the boat, I'm a person who has a boat. Or I'm a person, if we have a small number of slips that are going to be hourly rates, let's just say, and I'm coming and I'm going from the concession shelter to the slips, or I'm going from the parking lot to the slips. I think we just have to make sure the walkability path, that somebody's have to walk around the volleyball courts in an awkward fashion.
Yeah, you could use the sidewalk that borders the boat launch as well.
To the east.
And I'm not visualizing where our new sidewalks will be on our exhibits.
Would the plaza be very walkable? Like, I kind of envision people walking directly through the center of the plaza. And then basically coming up to a fork in the road, and they would take a left on the main artery.
That's
sidewalk.
exactly how I envision it too.
And then I envision these little shelters as kind of offshoots.
Yep, that's exactly how I see it.
That's a good visual.
So, like,
Okay, yep.
But the plaza there's not going to be like a fence, or there's not going to be.
There's going to be no fences, no restrictions. It's going to be a purely open area.
Just going back for clarity, though, is that on the visual, these potential slips will be to the west of the current boat launch. Potentially.
No, to the east.
East. So a small, like 6 potentially on the west of the boat launch, and 20 on the east side of the boat launch, but it would all be on the west side of the park.
Okay,
Yep, west side of the park, east of the boat launch.
okay. So with that, though, they're going to come off the slips, and then this, what I'm envisioning, this is sidewalk that is to the east of the boat launch area, the diagonal part. That's sidewalk.
Yep.
So
So
they
you could connect sidewalk from the slips to that potentially.
Right, so people coming, I mean, anybody coming to a beach knows they have to walk over a beach, I'm gonna guess. So once they're there, then it goes to the point that sidewalk can take you all the way to the plaza. And I
You would
think,
not necessarily have to cross a beach. There is roughly a 45-foot gap where there's no sand between the fence for the boat launch and the sand. So right there is where you could put your piers.
okay, all
So you
right,
wouldn't actually have to cross through any sand, and the sidewalk could go all the way to the water and all the way to the pier.
That's kind of what I envision as
okay,
well.
and that'd be
Yep.
great for the
Yep.
ADA and things like that.
Yep, so people who are rolling their coolers and trying to access
Yep.
their boat
Yep.
could just use the sidewalks.
I think that'd be good, but I think that way you have the sidewalk and we can finagle the sidewalk to get to all these main
Yep.
points from that point. That's good. Question, Anita?
So the way that we're looking at this, and I think we talked about the concern on this, and maybe that's already been considered, but are all the sidewalks ADA
Yes.
compliant? Okay, I thought that's what
Absolutely.
was said, thank you.
So when we were talking about this change in location of the concession shelter to the east side of the plaza, I would prefer it to go closer to the water so I wouldn't have that grade change, but everything would be designed as ADA compliant as possible.
And as the planning goes on, and I know the price goes up with this idea, but you could delineate maybe one, like, side of it for bicycles and the other side for walking?
I don't think I would be in favor of bicycle access interior of the park.
So no, so then it goes back to the thought about having the bike ramp on the east side.
Yeah.
They're gonna come in the thing, and they're gonna go the road, the path to there.
Sure, I think that would be fine having two bike parking locations. We're not gonna have fences in this park anymore ideally, so it would be more open. But yeah, I would not be in favor of having bike access into the park.
Would it,
They could walk their bikes on the sidewalk, or no?
Sure, yeah, but not riding of your bike inside
Okay,
of the
all right.
park.
would putting a bike rack on the south side of the concession stand be a possibility? I mean, if, kind of based on some of the stuff we talked about, it'd be like basically 100 feet. It's right at the entrance of the park.
Yeah, I would prefer to keep them nearest to the entrance as possible, so either the entrance to the park or near the parking lot would be ideal.
Yeah, I think it's fine if nobody's gonna be riding in the park, but yeah, they still have to have a place to put them when they get to wherever they walk to, I would conjecture. Yeah, and we can figure out how many they need and such. All right, thank you. Any other, as we move from west to east, any other? So we're gonna look at potentially moving the volleyball courts more towards the water. The plaza picnic area is also going to move, hopefully, closer to the water. Correct?
Correct.
And with the picnic ice rink, is this ice rink going to have a slight edge on it, so when you're filling it, you can just fill the?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit before. The reason behind this picnic and ice rink area is trying to still provide that ice rink, but there's an example that's in Waterford. This would be a seasonal ice rink that's installed like a border system, stored in the off season, so you have a flat surface to actually install it and then removed. So that would be the whole intent behind it.
Okay.
So initially, when we looked at, the 2018 concepts, I didn't like the idea of coupling the stormwater management system with the ice rink. They're getting exceptionally harder to make. It's a very, very labor intensive, and there could be implications on both the stormwater system and the ice rink. Basically, I just didn't want to install a decent ice rink and a decent stormwater system, and rather just install a really good stormwater system and a really good ice rink. Keep them separate, so yeah, it would be a kit-style system that goes on top of the plaza in the off-season. You would still have the lights overhead. That concession area, I think you missed this when we were there. There would be a portion of this concession area that is heated in the winter. You would have your warming shelter accessibility and like minor restroom access in the off-season.
And this is an ice rink, not a hockey rink.
We would build it to a hockey rink specifications, because that's what border systems come in. There are different sizes that you can get.
Okay.
Ideally, this would be what we have currently is what would be ideal.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Would this replace the one at Memorial Park, or would you have one there too, ice skating?
Commons
Second-
Park?
Commons Park, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100% we would have both.
Oh, you'd have both, okay.
Yep. I wouldn't stop making the one on Commons Park in favor of this.
Do you have an idea on the measurements of what this rink would look like, size-wise?
I'd have to pull it up again. I would have to get the dimensions first on this plaza, because I would build the plaza or I would make an ice rink that would fit the plaza. I wouldn't do it the other way around, if that makes sense. I would rather have what we want in a plaza size and then get an ice rink system to fit that rather than vice versa.
Okay.
And one of the things that was discussed, I think, last week is that with the system that Eric had proposed for the ice rink, it could potentially be used 4 months out of the year.
Yeah, so this is a chiller-based system. So the one in Waterford, they flood it in lifts. What we do is spray. So I think I was saying before, I mean, we had exceptional amounts of employee time and labor that go into them. These are flooded in lifts, so you're flooding, 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch at a time. That freezes, then you flood it again and it freezes the top coats. You'd have chiller systems. You could, I know the one in Waterford, they're running basically immediately after Thanksgiving through sometime in March. Fairly reliably. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be freezer-like conditions on these chillers, but it would be much more adequate.
Okay, good. And as we're going through this, this is concepts. We're not worried about monies.
Absolutely, yeah. Right at this point, I mean, this is concepts. Obviously, we will be have to think about financials, but this is at least, we would like to design it what we would think of as ideal first, and then that gives us the more research to start looking at financials. Like a double-decker shelter, that's gonna be substantially more expensive, but what's the difference? What is the actual difference in cost of those? We should design it to fit what we want first, and then see what it comes up with afterwards.
All right,
I
thank
just
you.
did a quick search on, I was curious about what the Waterford ice rink looked like. It doesn't have a picture of it, but they do a big sponsorship program, silver and gold sponsors, and you could have
Yep.
your company's name on the boards or whatever around the ice rink. So that was a really cool idea. So I think to your point about figuring out our ideal and then going after ways to fund it.
And they've had it for, I think, about 4 years now, and it seems to be working really well.
Yeah, maybe we could get Rockefeller Center, Lake Mills.
Sure. I mean, I like the idea of still having it in the park center.
We actually, I think Mary and I talked about the idea of, like, if we did have one main artery sidewalk, then these little offshoots could potentially be paver stones. Would that be ADA compliant? And then people could buy,
It would be,
because that's at like Memorial, or excuse me, at Union Terrace, there's all these little paver stones that say, Susie, will you marry me? Or in memory of John, or things like that, of that nature. And I remember you had said that Memorial Park benches are a wanted commodity.
yeah, they are. So it's at this point, I haven't had any in a while, but a couple of years ago, it was getting difficult. I stopped approving memorial bench donations, just we're really at capacity for them and suggesting other things to do. How that works with construction, I'm not quite sure. So they would have to be installed after the fact. I'm not quite sure how that whole process works. But they would be designed to be ADA compliant. They would have to be. Now, I wouldn't do snow clearing on any of these in the winter, like any of those offshoot areas and stuff like that. And that's normally one of the complaints for having pavers is, it's really rough on the pavers themselves when you're doing snow clearing and everything. So I wouldn't do any snow removal. It would just be kind of the immediate area around the plaza and the concession shelter.
Yeah, that's a good concept, and I think people would like that.
Hmm?
Any other comments right now we're at the plaza area, and now we're moving east from the plaza. Any other comments?
Are we at the concession shelter yet?
No, if that's.
That's east of the
yes,
plaza?
Yes, we are, we can be at the concession.
Well, first of
Plaza.
all, I really like the idea of the plaza, and I don't know if we are all in agreement that that's one of the core building blocks of the plan, regardless of whether it's plan rendering the B or the new one with the two-story concept. I like the plaza idea. I think that would be cool with those lights strung. I think that would be super, I would say we have a lot of character and ambiance, and I think that would really lighten up that park that'd be really cool.
And I envision like planters and stuff on the sides of it and everything else as well, kind of where the lights come down and everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna love hanging there. I just think that is a really great idea. I'm on the concession shelter. I'm really liking the idea of the two-story, because I think a second-story place to sit and see things, I think that elevation would be really neat. I think that would, I am anxious to see what that might look like. I am most concerned, however, about the definition of concession. Because our number one, by hands down, in the survey from 2022, the number one thing that came back as feedback is people wanted a restaurant. When I think of the definition of restaurant, like how do you fulfill as many things as possible that say this is a restaurant? And I think the one thing that we're not going to get is air conditioning. And so how do you create something that is on a hot day? And I think shade is one way, ceiling fans or fans somehow or something, some sort of air movement might be a way to get, it's not air conditioning, it's not indoor seating. And then I think it comes with a food offering that is more than just a cold sandwich and adult beverages. Because I observed people like to hang out and relax and get something hot and talk and kids play, but it is an adult beverage, it is a hot food item of some sort. And so I think that I'm interested in making sure we understand the concession shelter and what it is or is not, or what we desire it to be or desire it not to be, because then it doesn't compete or conflict with the food truck concept. When the food truck in the survey was the lowest desired option at the time. And so I just want to I'm interested in a conversation to see what we are thinking about as it relates to what would be in that concession area. And is it going to be, because I've gotten some input from, Patrick Doyle, as an example, had a concept called the Taste of Lake Mills. So could you find a way to provide food that gives you an experience of Lake Mills restaurateurs? So maybe Patrick Doyle gives, he has Doyle's Dogs there, and the Pyramid might have pizzas. So there's a little pizza oven in this concession shelter. So, and then the Grist might be the hamburger place, and Taranina might be the beer. I don't know what it might look like, but that is something that I think that definition of how we set that up to make sure it fits what we desire. And maybe we don't have to make that decision now, but it might when you're talking about whether you need fume hoods or certain kinds of venting, that will make a difference on how close it is to the shelter next door. Or, it might create something. I'm not a designer in that regard, but I would like to have some thoughts on our discussion regarding that part sometime.
I have some thoughts. So one of the reasons, slightly backtracking, one of the reasons I'm kind of a proponent of 3 volleyball courts is it offers an opportunity, if you look at Exhibit B, to put a shelter to the west of the 3 volleyball courts. A shelter, I have a printout for everyone of just a simple single pitch roof. And then on the east side of Exhibit B, there's 2 other shelters. I think the shelter next to the concessions should basically act as the Memorial Union brat stand, where you have it looks exactly like the other 2 shelters. A local restaurant could lease it. They can lease equipment, you can lease grills. Because it has no walls, I don't believe you need ventilation. You would be able to sell, I love the idea of local food, local beer, local wine. You could have stipulations where you have to have certain things on tap. You could cook burgers, brats, hot dogs, or whoever leases it for the summer, the season, would have their option of what they want to cook for the community. And you have a few stipulations as to what they would sell, what we'd want them to sell. And then the concessions could sell sunscreen, ice. I think the idea of like snowshoes, cross-country skis, ice skates, life jackets, ice cream, souvenirs, snacks, candy, slushies, sell sunglasses, rent volleyballs, sell frisbees, is an idea for the concession stand, and it would also double as a warming shelter. So the hot food, the tap beer, you could have cocktails on tap. In that theory, you don't have to have liquor bottles. They're pre-mixed. And if a local vendor, a local business wants to lease it for the summer, we have a couple stipulations of what we want to offer. I love the idea of Mary's about how we make sure that local businesses are represented in the idea, and hopefully that they're the ones that run it. And ultimately, if that doesn't work out, then we still have one of the shelters that we would build.
So, Mike?
I have one question on all this. So the seating, where everybody's gonna eat all this stuff, is the shelters. We're not talking about the concession shelters having indoor seating or being a restaurant.
The expectation that would be like the vending, correct? And then
Excuse me?
that would be like the vending area, I suppose,
Right,
for the
but
most
so the
part.
seating will be the shelters and picnic tables.
Yeah, that would be the plaza and the
Plaza.
concession. Yeah.
Or
And the concession shelter, so off of the top of my head, picture a 40-foot by 100-foot rectangle. 25 feet of it, of the 100 feet would be restrooms, 25 feet of it would be concessions, 50 feet by 40 feet in the center would be picnic tables, seating area, and then the entire second floor would be all seating area.
In addition to the plaza, you're talking about
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
concessions.
Correct. So you'd have second floor seating above the concessions, centralized seating in the middle of the concessions, so would be ADA compliant, I assume. You'd have two separate shelters, one on the east side and one on the west side. Small shelters, roughly 30 by 30 was my estimate.
What I would say at this point, I absolutely love the idea, and I think that specifically food service and how the concession shelter works and the vision for it, I think would be its own agenda item, honestly.
Okay.
Like today we are discussing what our vision is of concessions and food trucks and everything. I think it is a great idea, specifically for tonight, if we could just talk about like layout. But I think how you want to run it, I think there's enough topics just within those two areas to legitimately have its own agenda item. Like there's enough concepts there and how you would want to run this. I think it would warrant its own discussion.
Right,
There's
so-
a lot of options you could do there.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good idea, so we can add that tonight. And we can maybe do some homework and bring up where
Yeah,
people
bring
have had this.
examples. Examples
Yeah.
would help a lot.
Because you're talking about University of Wisconsin, Madison's, or Union, people might be familiar with that, but there's what, like the Milwaukee, I can't remember the name of it.
South Shore.
No, the Milwaukee right downtown. Where
Public market.
Public market, because I'm thinking it could be air conditioned, but also heated and things like that. So you have a space where people can gather, but have options for food that would be hot. Anita, you had a question or comment?
When I first looked at this, I kind of wondered if the 6 stalls for the food trucks was a little high.
It is right now. So currently, we have not had 6 vendors down there for food trucks. It was built because that was the anticipation that may be the only food opportunity available down there. That could be decreased, it could be eliminated. It was just one of the options that we were proposing. If we do have food trucks, that's definitely the location I would prefer them to be. But it's up to you guys if you want to recommend food trucks or not. If there's not food trucks there, that would be additional park space, and you could have your bike parking there, but that's just the initial rendering. So the reason why that was selected there was the utility run for it. They would all have electrical pedestals, and then also the proximity to trash as well within the maintenance garage and everything. But I think just within those two topics, there's enough to have a whole evening of discussion on what you want to do direction-wise for
Yeah,
them.
I think that you could have where the concessions shelter, that could become more of a restaurant or eating area that, forget about the food trucks, have them, the businesses be in an expanded size there, but,
So basically like a permanent venue for them for the most part.
right. But, because you could use it for, it could be, because the Memorial Union, as Jacob says, you go out there, you can get your brats and your hamburgers and such, and you go to the other one, but you can still go inside and get air conditioning. You can go inside and get some quiet. And so I think that would be something we should consider, that there's a place that people can go inside if it's warm and they can get air conditioning, they get a beverage or they get a hot item. And then also in the wintertime, that could be a warming area too. Maybe not the whole thing, but part of it could be a warming area. But I would rather have us go to the ideal for the public than to have food trucks. And we could, as you said, we could have a number of our local restaurants might be willing to have a smaller space down there.
So you're thinking that the concession area would have some indoor seating?
Yeah, I think I'm looking at expanding that concession shelter, maybe even double it in size. And then have inside of that could be like the Milwaukee Market or the other places we could look at, where they could walk in and you can, all sorts of different foods. I'm trying to think.
Oh,
there's-
like a food court.
Oh,
You're
yes.
envisioning a food court instead of concession stand.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. I would rather have that than to have a concession stand, because I don't want somebody getting a cold sandwich or, something out of a vending machine. And I think if we're looking for scale and for usability more year-round, both as, for the people that are skating, the people that are enjoying it, the silent sporters down there, I think any of that stuff would be good. And I don't know about Doyle's Dogs or some of the other places, but they might be willing to have a pizza place down there or hot dogs down there year-round, on the weekend. Maybe not every day, but on a weekend or something like that. I just, again, going back to the dream and the concept, I'd rather have that than food trucks. Because food trucks aren't air conditioned, last time I checked.
If hypothetically, if we were to go ahead with the food truck plaza, and I assume it would be a concrete slab. and
Those
we-
would be,
So let's say hypothetically that didn't work and we wanted to switch to more of a restaurant type, place that's cold or place that's warm. Containers were an idea, container ships potentially being refurbished. Could those sit on the slab right there and be, you'd add windows, you'd add air conditioning, insulation, everything?
it could. There would need to be some retrofitting and stuff done because they are like actual stalls that you pull in. But if you were to put something like that in, let's say further down the road, I mean, that would be the place to do it because utilities would be ran there anyways.
But basically what I'm saying is putting concrete there wouldn't ultimately be a waste of money if we did go that route. Like we wouldn't have to rip it up to put in.
Correct, yeah. You could do it, perhaps, maybe that's overflow parking, or if that's your designated bike parking, or let's say you want to pursue e-bikes or something, that could be an e-bike area as well. So it wouldn't be a waste. It would have some form of use. So what I'll do, what I will do after this meeting is I'll do my best to make a few consolidated sketches and a few bullet points on what was discussed as well. And before I reach out to our planner to make some renderings, make sure I get all of our topic points covered, just to run it by the board.
Yeah, so if we're moving along here, then are we going to the playground?
Yep.
We're moving west, so I think we're.
When
done
I heard
with
it sounded like the location of the playground and shelter were pretty unanimously favored.
I agree with you. Before we get too far to the east though, there's that, volleyball court, that unused
Yeah.
volleyball court. I don't really like the idea of wasting space. I think that, at our last meeting, Mary had mentioned fire pits. And I like the idea of maybe a fire pit court where you'd have 4 separate fire pits, people could bring in firewood, because I love the idea of utilizing the park in the winter. So if we're gonna have ice skating and we're gonna have a concession stand in a heated area that's open, would fire pits be a possibility with, a couple benches around them? People could buy firewood at the concession stand or bring their own or whatever.
It would. I would anticipate that there might have to be a sidewalk installed to it if you do kind of have a plaza there, and if we're trying to limit sidewalks, that might be an issue. Maybe those are tacked onto an existing shelter or something. I mean, I can have it rendered because right now it's just proposed planting areas, so
Yeah, 'cause
it could be rendered.
Feels like a very unused space that,
Okay.
where that volleyball court is right now. Kind of feels like it'd just be a big empty spot on the map.
And it pretty much would, I mean, it is existing flat space.
And I don't feel like, 3 or 4 fire pits and a couple of benches would be
Okay.
incredibly expensive.
So Jacob, for clarity, and Eric, where are we speaking on this?
If we look at option A or rendering A, there are 2 small shelters on the east side of the park. This would be between the food truck plaza and the center of those 2 shelters is where the existing 5th volleyball court is. I'm really not in favor of keeping that volleyball court. It's not a fantastic area for it. And just propose additional plantings in that location. What Jacob's saying is it would be kind of like a 1-for-1. Perhaps that could be like a additional picnic area or something like that, and with fire pits in it. And I'll see what I can have done as far as a rendering.
And if I recall, that volleyball court is more like the pickup for the families that are.
It's like a
picnicking.
reserve, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't think there's any big loss at not having that. But I think fire pits or anything that kind of gets that ambiance down by the water would be definitely worth pursuing.
Yeah, because, well, I remember we were talking and it's like, this is a beautiful park and in the winter it's just empty. So if the ice skating is bringing people in, maybe, you know.
Or
it's a-
ice fisher, the
Ice
people ice
fishermen maybe
fishing and the
wanna-
people that are using the skating out on the water and
Maybe
such.
they want to get off the lake and talk
Yep,
about their
yep, yep,
catch and sit around a hot fire and
Yep,
eat up
yep.
or something.
No, good thinking. Anything else? Anita, you have a question, comment? Mike, did that answer your question as to where we were on the map and rolling through the items? So we are at, right now we're talking about the space that is between the shelter and the playground equipment. Is that true? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah. The
Isn't that what it says? We got
shelter playground?
shelter, then it says playground, right, to the far
Yep.
east?
And from what I heard, that was pretty unanimously favored on that layout.
Yes.
I would continue having, like I said, that sidewalk coming around the playground to
Yes.
like a kayak, non-motorized access area.
Yep.
Is that shelter on top of the hill compliant with ADA or would there be?
That one I gotta look. I can't go over a certain amount of grade or percentage of grade. That one might be a stretch because that was actually the issue with the current playground is that it is not handicap accessible. So I'd have to look into that and see what it is. It was kind of the same thing that you were talking, potentially unused space if it is flat in that location, proposing a shelter, but I'd have
And
to
this
see if it's
playground
handicap
equipment
compliant.
would be similar to what we have at Bartles Beach?
Bartles Beach Memorial, I'd proposed rubberized concrete border,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Nice, yeah.
So
Do we have to have, does everything have to be ADA compliant, or is it all right? if
ideally,
most of them-
yes.
Okay.
And we're also in Bartles Beach and some of these others, are we talking, still having fire pits on stands? So somebody can,
Fire pits on stands. Can
grills, thank you.
Grills, yeah, grills would be placed periodically throughout the park.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't want to lose grills, because I think those are very
No,
much. part of the
I
summer.
also like having, one or two, like one next to each shelter, but then having other ones spaced
Yeah.
periodically throughout the park.
Yeah.
I think that's nice.
Yeah.
So if we're having a lot of green space areas and trees and everything, they'd be placed randomly throughout the
Yeah,
park.
I think, but like the Bartles Beach model is, I think is a
Yeah.
good one.
So I wouldn't have like a designated grilling location.
Right. No,
There's,
this,
yeah.
yep.
Yep, same page on that one.
Okay, thank you. So if I, just to wrap up, if I'm hearing, we're gonna create an agenda item for, specifically for the restaurant, food, whatever it would be.
Yeah. What I would say is bring examples, do some research, kind of look to see what examples you do like, maybe what other locations have. What I will do, I see there's a couple differences on what we talked about this evening. So I'll come through with like a bulleted list to all of you, ideally tomorrow, so I can get this to the rendering process as soon as possible. So ideally I have an option A and an option B, but I'll touch base with the board members by tomorrow.
All right,
And honestly, this is a fantastic start for me to get forward moving on the rendering. So this is a huge help for me.
and then just for clarity, pretty much everything that we're seeing south of the plaza is agreed as okay. So the parking and all the other things that are on the proposal is, we're fine with that.
Would now be the time to address the boats sitting on trailers parking or is that a different
The
subject?
boat sitting on trailers parking isn't that on Exhibit B, that would be what, Exhibit?
So the
We don't
code-
really have parking in our purview, is my understanding, that we're not supposed to go there.
Okay.
Isn't that right, or not?
Well, I don't know the parking lot, or is it the boat parking?
It's the
is an
parking
amenity?
lot specifically. So the way that I interpret it is like the parking lot itself, we're going to be required to meet some specifications and design requirements within it. I would think that boat parking could be recreational amenity if they're down there.
Okay.
So what I will say right now, and perhaps you can provide me some clarification or think about this for next meeting. This current parking lot design was not developed with boat parking in mind.
Now, when you say boat parking, we're talking boat storage.
Boats on trailers in the parking lot.
Yep.
This parking lot was not designed to accommodate that.
So you're asking, we're talking more than what's presently there for the boat launch.
This is excluding the boat launch. This does not include the boat launch.
Right,
This
this
does
is
not
something
include someone.
different.
This is boat storage. You're correct.
Yep,
This
okay.
parking lot was not designed or rendered currently to meet that need of seasonal boat and trailer storage.
And are there 35 boats that sit on trailers roughly in the parking lot, or exactly 35?
There are 35 available spots, 34 are rented out because one is basically reserved in the event of emergency or law enforcement parking.
Yeah, so we might be looking at, they could park them at the food truck place if we decided to do that?
Yeah, if that's something you want to pursue in lieu of food trucks, that could be seasonal storage. But like I said, as of right now, it's not rendered with that in mind.
Well, we had discussed if we were to do storage, didn't we prefer it to be closer to Sandy
Sandy
Beach
Beach
Road?
Road.
Because then you don't conflict with the boats and the people walking. So that on the north side where the food truck plaza is would not be the safest place for people to put their boats.
Well, and I'm just going for my own, but that boat storage, that's really storage. I mean,
Correct.
they don't, to your point, Mary, they don't come and go with those boats.
They do.
Yeah, but not
Yeah.
a lot.
Seasonally, yeah. Between May and September, every weekend.
Yeah,
So primarily on weekends, but the anticipation or expectation is that the people park their boats and trailers there due to the proximity to the boat launch to use their boats, so they don't have to store them at home or anything like that. But they are used regularly.
okay. But then they do leave them there for the
Season.
winter.
Yep, for the season.
Yeah. So, yeah, so if that's the case, I think Mary's comment is valid, that we maybe, rather than having them there where I'm just using the food truck area as an example, because that's kind of where they are now in the parking lot. They're away from Sandy Beach Road, but maybe if we put them on this side.
That's if you want to continue providing that.
Right.
Is the question.
Right.
Is that an amenity that you wish to continue to provide as we design the park?
I am content letting it expire. I feel there's private storage throughout town.
Same here.
That was the initial intent behind the concept drawing.
One of my thoughts is if I hypothetically stored my boat a little farther away, I then have the choice between the north side or the south side to launch. North side has far more parking. It could clear up the boat launch traffic on the south side if there's far more available.
So that
parking
was the intent behind it. Now, if you wish to have it rendered to fit such parking, I can have it done, but that wasn't the initial intent behind it.
And I don't know, I know that some of those boats have been down there a long time. You see the same boats year after year after year, so.
Well, it's because we have a good rate.
Yeah.
Right, right.
I will say
That might be leading to our next discussion.
I will
about
say
the-
there's a substantial amount of turnaround in those compared to the lifts, but still not much.
Yeah,
Yeah, for what it's worth, it seems to me that that's dedicating a significant percentage of the space for a relatively small number of people.
Correct.
It's, yeah, a
Generally,
third,
I'm not in favor.
probably about a third of the entire parking lot size is boat trailer
That's hard to
parking.
justify.
I agree.
and we can talk about that maybe at another time,
Yeah.
but also it might be a place for revenue, maybe not have parking storage there for May to September, but maybe we could have parking storage there from October to April.
Winter seasonal could be pursued, because I would be hard pressed to say that the entire parking lot will be filled in the off-season.
Yeah.
I would certainly hope that people come to the park, but that's something that can be pursued.
Yeah, but I think there's people need a place to put them, and they've been using them, and I think we might pursue it because it's a potential benefit and also revenue for us if we did have that for the off-season.
So when we tie in the fees we're about to discuss, one of the thoughts is we could tie in winter storage at Sandy Beach with a boat slip or lift rental in theory.
Yes.
So hypothetically, you rent out for,
Sure.
X amount of dollars. That includes the winter storage outside.
Yep.
It could be, yes. Yes. We'd have to add it to it, but yes. Anita, you had a comment or a question? No, I'm good. All right, so we are okay moving forward.
This provides
Eric?
me a lot of stuff to come forward with at the next meeting. I'll get some renderings in progress, and I'll touch base with the board members throughout the week.
Yeah, and I would suggest if people don't have ideas, the food courts and such, the Milwaukee Plaza, the
Yeah,
UW
prepare those
Memorial
for next meeting.
Union. There's also one on over in Monona that has Madison has a sort of like a beverage place and a food place. I can't remember the name of the park, but it's in.
It's
you
like a
think-
beer garden-ish.
Yeah, yeah, but I think something like that, just get an idea of what they're doing now, and those things are quite popular, and they're on bike paths and such.
So I have one last idea to contribute to Sandy Beach, since we're not talking about finances yet. One of my favorite things is going to a state park and taking my kids up the observation tower. I don't know if that's remotely a possibility to put a 50 to 60-foot observation tower, based on my little map here, somewhere around the food truck plaza might be a possibility. But I love walking up to the top, and it's a great view. It'd be a great spot, but I obviously don't know.
I think there may be, if something like that is pursued, my recommendation is to maybe look at something like Tyranina Park, if you look at, potentially installing something there or something. But I think it would be quite a bit down there currently. I can, if you request, I can have it rendered to fit such, but that would be kind of my general thought right now. I think if you have a watchtower or like a viewing tower observation or whatever you want to call it, perhaps like a natural park like Tyranina might be a little bit more fitting.
And I am only going to what I know about Peninsula Park and a number of the others. Some of them were shut down for the last 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
for maintenance.
Yep.
And they're extremely expensive to put up, and they're extremely expensive to
They are.
maintain.
Liability.
Well, all that. But there's one down at Kettle Moraine is a gorgeous one, but again, I'm all for it. I love the idea.
Yeah.
But they're not ADA, and they are pricey. So, but yes, put it in there. We'll find out what it is. But I also think that if we do have that and get it sponsored by somebody, but I think Tyrannia Park would be a good place too. And you could put a little camera up on the top there and have them just do their video game on the bottom, and
Yeah.
the camera could go back and forth for their look. All right, so we are moving on from agenda item on the discussion of the resolution, and now we're going to new business B, discussion recommendations on the 2026 Parks fee schedule. And
Would it be appropriate, Tim, to maybe request like a 3-minute recess?
that is a very appropriate thing. So we will do a 3-minute recess, reconvene at, what is it there, 7:15, work for people? All right.
I think it's a process.
That's plant new trees.
That would
They
be
plant new
all
trees.
part, the other big
I mean,
one. This one right here,
they don't make you good
where all the mobile homes are.
newer homes in there, and I think there's some of the.
Yes, all that. Because right now, those are the ones that, the former ones right down by the
That's the
park, and then you go up the hill, and then all.
Been a while.
And that's.
Did I ever give you a copy of the, my report? Did you ever get a copy of the report that I gave to all my research from? Is there some ideas that concession?
Specifically, the reason we're not talking about the trailer park and focusing on park stuff now, because anything can be done at the trailer park. Like, do we continue having it? Is it as designed? I have no idea.
Well, I think they're having, staff and others are having conversation around what that's gonna cost to get that all remedied.
It's a lot.
Just be aware of maybe clacky to get so people know. We're gonna be going, right, so we're back from a break and we are going to start the discussion on the parks fee schedule. And just so we have clarity, we are looking at the 2023-24 item and then the 2025 boat lift fee comparison to Pewaukee and I don't know where some of these city of Oconomowoc and
that's
a
fine.
number of other ones that are on. And I'm gonna label the 23-24 launch as item C, or D, I mean, so it'd be D. Item D, and then the 25 boat lift fee comparison, that will be item E.
If I can introduce some of the intent and hopefully some of the direction, that would be great. So in looking at 24, I think the two things that we should focus on, at least for fees, are specifically for the shelter reservations as well as boat lifts. This is somewhat time sensitive, but this would be on the anticipation, this is what we're charging for our current amenities, not for what is to be expected at Sandy Beach or anything like that. So this is what we currently have for the 2026 budget.
So 25 and 24 are the same? So this year's is the same as 24?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank
yep,
you.
that is correct. So we were operating on 2024 budgets. So if you want to take a look at them, I cannot do anything with the boat launch fees. Those are the state maximums and it matches the township. And then there were a couple things that I needed to update on this actual attachment. If you recall, one of the things that Parks Board addressed individually for the 2025 season was boat lift storage. So the very, very last item on this page, that is $100 for a city resident and $125 for a non-resident. That was done at the end of season last year. But the rest of it is still current. I think the easiest things to focus on, like I said, was specifically the boat launches or the boat lifts and the shelter reservations. I wouldn't really be interested in pursuing a change in Sandy Beach entrance fees for this year, as well as exempting ball diamond fees. I'm treating that separately on our athletic field policy. So what I found, it's actually extraordinarily hard to find other municipalities that manage lifts or slips, I'm sorry. But I was able to find a few in some of my research. City of Oconomowoc and City of Pewaukee are the only two municipalities on here. Both of those are slips. There's no other municipality that I've found that operates lifts. So hopefully you can take that into consideration.
So just on that, Eric, so on Terrace Beach Retreat, which is in Green Lake, that's a private entity?
Yeah, these are not all municipalities. So there's a mix of private and public. That's why I noted the only one that actually has a lift would be Terrace Beach Retreat on Green Lake. And then also the length of these leases varied between their entities as well. So hopefully this kind of provides you some reasoning, justification, and information on thinking about our current fees and our future fees. So,
Sorry, before you go on,
Yep.
on length of lease, you have slip and slip under City of Oconomowoc. and
oh,
Schreiner.
my
Is
apologies.
that seasonal?
Seasonal, yes.
Seasonal, okay.
That was an autocorrect.
There was a slip up.
Yes, that was an autocorrect then, and
Take the
good
guy's
old
mic
Excel.
away.
So there is some time sensitivity on this. This does not have to be decided at tonight's meeting, but this does have to be decided by June's meeting in development for our 2026 budget. So if a conclusion can't be kind of reached tonight, we can do so in June. A lift is inherently a little bit more expensive, or the thought process being having a lift has more amenities than a slip. Your boat is being stored out of water versus in water. And I'll try to provide some input as best I can.
So just, so I'm looking at the Terrace Beach Retreat, that's a lift, $425 a week. That comes out to $6,800 for 16 weeks, roughly? Okay.
Yep, you can assume that that's about the length of a season, is about 16 weeks.
Can I ask clarification? What does it mean when it says second watercraft on the lift or second trailer / watercraft in space? What does it mean, those seconds
We
mean?
don't pursue that anymore. That was a carryover from previous. That's if someone has like two small watercraft and they put it on the same lift. I'm not pursuing that. I wouldn't allow a second watercraft to be on a lift, so that wouldn't be a fee. Yeah.
To remove that, okay.
So that's gonna be
I see.
removed. Same thing with the second trailer, says second watercraft in spaces. I'm not interested in having multiple watercraft in the same space. Any other questions at all? Like I said, I think kind of the areas that I think would need the most focus would be boat lifts, followed by potentially shelter reservations.
Just on going back to 2024 and the comments about the second trailer, second space, all that. Then we have canoe, kayak, storage space. Has there been discussion of adding board storage? So like stand up paddleboard?
You can still store it on the same thing. So you can store a canoe, you can store a kayak, a paddleboard, all that kind of stuff on those same racks.
But I just think we maybe just for clarity, we
Yep.
add that
Yep, that'll
canoe,
be fine.
kayak.
I
and-
can put,
Yeah.
so our racks, our storage racks would be able to accommodate a
Yeah,
paddleboard.
yeah, I just think it'd be good to
Sure.
people know that.
So on the, I don't know where to start, but on the boat lift, seasonal rental. If you are a riparian owner, most people are paying between $700 and $800, maybe even more, to get the lift in the water and out of the water per season. So right there, it's at $800 per. And then, let's just say you have to store it somewhere, so now whether you're city or non-city, but let's say we're city, so it's another $100, so it's $900, and we haven't even charged yet for all of the work when you said you're adjusting the lifts and you're doing all this extra, which you shouldn't be, which I think it's really gracious and generous of the city to have offered lifts, honestly. I think that we are really undercharging on the seasonal lift rental. Just because basic taking in and out and just storing it, I'm at almost at $1,000 already, again, without having all of the rental part throughout the summer. So I feel we should increase that significantly.
Should we even have lifts, or is this part of the discussion?
This really isn't the discussion for that right now.
I
This
think
this
slips
really
is better for the future, but we
yeah.
don't have them, that is like probably 2 years out.
Yeah,
I'm
this
guessing.
is, for clarification, this is what are we charging for what we currently have?
Yeah.
I would agree with Mary. I think we are incredibly underpriced. We have such a limited number, and I think that by raising the rates, one of the things we would do is we would kind of force the hand of people who don't necessarily use their boat. I would like to see the boats that are on the lifts be used, because I think that would clear up congestion at the boat launch. I think it would clear up trailer parking. I go to Sandy Beach, 95% of those boats are sitting there on a beautiful Saturday. They're not used, and I think, once you're in, it's such an exclusive club that you're never gonna give it up. And by having such low rates, we're kind of just allowing that. I would essentially double the price. I think $2,500 a year is fair.
Input, recommendations, discussion?
Well, in past discussions, and this is a very, as you're saying, a premium place and these are premium spots, and we've pared down the wait lists a few years back, because I don't remember how many lifts do we have?
We have 26.
26. We had a wait list of,
Well over 100.
right,
Wait times are anticipated anywhere between 16 to 20 years.
right. It's like, Packer tickets. And yet we have people that are legacy that have had the boats and they've had these lifts, and we had the discussion that we want to make sure this is not a rich person's sport. And we want people to have a boat, and they've had their boat, and they have their family, and we do not, we've talked about this in the other boards, we do not want to price those people out because someone's got cash and they can say, I want that lift, and you're out. So we've had the discussion, we want to be cognizant of people that don't have cash, but they still have this, they've had this lift. I would be very, very careful of saying, you haven't been paying enough, you've been lucky, and so now we're going to force you out by money.
I'm just going with the market rate.
I'm
So
not
if you
arguing
have
that.
Minky or you have any of these lift companies come to take your lift in and out, you're spending $800. And so just to charge $13.25 to me doesn't feel like that's market rate that the city should be charging at a minimum of what all of the other lift companies are charging to remove the lift as a starting point. That's where I'm at. I'm just thinking it's not market even. And affordability isn't, and I feel for those people or for people who are, maybe not able to afford an increase, but it is a part of an investment that you're making. And if they can't afford the lift, then they have to find another alternative to store and launch. But I think I'm going market rate. I'm not, it is, everybody, I'm trying to make it fair market rate rather than it being, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but I'm trying to make it just what others are having to pay to do the same service. And so the city should expect the same payment for the same service. I'm trying to like.
Yeah, I see that,
Yeah.
and what I do anticipate is that if someone does not want to pay that rate, there would probably be a substantial amount of people that are still retained on that wait list that would.
I think you told me 10 out of 26 of the lifts are for out-of-state residents.
They're trailer park residents, so they would still qualify for it.
Okay.
So they are Sandy Beach Trailer Park residents. So I don't want to confuse like in-state versus out-of-state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going to discussions in the past, and that we would really, really like to raise the prices because they are under price for the amenity and such. It goes back to, do we grandfather it in, but that doesn't get anybody to move, or do we just say, let them know it is going to be going up to market rate, and you've got whatever years to come up with this. So new people would be charged whatever rate we think is fair market, but anybody there would, I think it would be in our interest to let them know that it's going to be going up, so you can decide and you can budget for it. But I would be against, in this situation, maybe doubling it for 2026.
Yeah, so the way this would work then is this wouldn't be implemented until the season of 2026. I would anticipate this would probably go to council as well, so this would be a recommendation from the Parks Board to City Council for it, similar to kind of like what I did with the athletic field policy or something. So this would be a recommendation from Parks Board on what your preferred price would be.
Well, you wouldn't have to double it. I mean, 2,000, if you put it up to that, kind of puts you roughly in between. Like, that's little, if you just look at those numbers, that's not bad, or 25, 2,000, 22.
Well, but remember, Mike, you're looking at slips, not lifts.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
but that's what we've got. There's only one lift there, and so we're.
The lift here is $6,800.
Right.
Yeah.
per season. So lifts are more expensive than slips. To
Yes.
store your boat on a lift, Mike, is,
No,
yeah.
I have a
Okay.
lift. I
Okay.
understand what Mary's saying. In fact, I just paid that. But I'm just saying, if, playing off what Tim was saying, if you don't want to bump it up that much, I have no problem doubling it personally. You know, it's good for you that you had a break all these years, but I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you can't afford it, then you can't afford it.
Well, we have to be careful. You know, people living on the lake with access to it, they're going to say, "Oh yeah, you can say that. You have access to it. You have your own lift. You have your this or that." I'm just going back to the comments we've had in the 20 whatever years I've been here. Those are precious commodities.
They are.
And
So our property taxes, if
and
not.
that is very true. Yeah, they probably don't have any idea what property taxes people
don't wanna
pay.
know.
I know that. What I'm saying is, I am totally for market rate. I am totally for making it a fair deal. What my point is that if it is approved, I would like to see it, like you got 3 years to be able to adjust this. It's gonna go up, this year it's, what is it, 1,300? Next year, I'm just making this up, next year it's 1,700. The year after that, it's gonna be 2,000. But our goal is, it's gonna be market rate, and it's in 2029, it's gonna be $3,000.
Yeah. So.
Still cheap
I wouldn't
compared to everything
support
else.
So from my understanding, you would, and this is just for 2026, so I wouldn't structure it like have each lease saying next year you would pay this amount, the following year you would pay this amount. This is, what are these people when they sign their, because these are only annual leases for all of these people, what is the fee that you will be paying for 2026? If the board wants to address this the same time next year for 27 and following 28, I mean, we probably should, just to keep up with market values and everything. But I wouldn't really be interested in doing like an updated lease structure or anything like that. This
Okay,
would be,
that's fair enough, good. Mary, you made a comment, then we'll get to Jake.
Oh, I feel it is right to go to market price in a year. I think we have an opportunity to make it right, and I know it's, gosh, I'd love to inch in a lot of price point increases all the time, but I think in this case, it's a luxury service that we are providing. It's a lift. And, you know, first of all, the fact that it's a lift is unique and differentiating to begin with. And this is, I mean, we've got the data that shows we are way under even slip market rates. And I don't know that we'll go beyond 1 year. Possibly, if we've discussed slips, 2027, we could actually be at slips already. That might be one of the lower hanging fruit concepts. And then we haven't even talked about whether we have a small number of those that would be QR code for visitors. I mean, we haven't even gotten to how that whole slip thing might look in the long run either. But I feel that moving to a market rate of 2,200 or 2,500 is fair. And I know some people, if they can't afford it, I feel for them. But it is a really nice offering that we have, and I feel like we need to make it right.
Jacob?
Eric, do you by any chance know, on Exhibit E, the boat lift fee comparison, how many slips or lifts are offered at each of these places?
I don't know.
You don't?
I mean, it varied so substantially. I know City Pewaukee really didn't have many. They had, I think they have several locations, with, you know, it wasn't like one consolidated location. They had a couple different areas on the lake or access points for it. But I think they had 16, I think was the number. I'm not quite sure though.
Well, just a couple of things with that. I'm just going back to, one, again, this is me. I don't think lifts are attractive. You know, they block the view, you don't, so as far as I'm concerned, we can get rid of lifts and just have slips there or such. But if we are gonna have lifts and all of the discussion here, I agree that if we want to be market rate, we're way underpriced.
Yeah. So I would say, like I was saying before, anticipate or design your recommendation or your suggested fee for these if no changes are made at Sandy Beach. This is what we will continue to have and recommend a price accordingly.
I recommend $2,500 a year with an annual percentage increase, just so that you can kind of avoid this in the future. It is a luxury. You know, I really wish I could put my boat on this lift for that fee. I would definitely do it.
So how we structure other leases is we will do, and this is actually similar to how we pursued the trailer park. It was not adjusted for several years. I think it was like 2014 or something like that. In 2023, we reassessed their lease fees. We did a one-time increase to what we thought was appropriate, and then we did 3% or CPI, whatever was more appropriate for each year increases. It normally comes around to 3% per season. It was 3% or CPI, whichever is less. And given CPI right now, it's normally 3% annual increases.
And CPI again is what?
Consumer Price Index.
Thank you. Anita, you have a comment?
Well, I think I understand what everyone is saying as far as issues. I guess I think I would be in favor of 2,500 with an annual 3% increase or whatever, or CPI, whatever is less, or, if 2,500 seems too high, then 2,200. But I definitely think there needs to be an increase to be keeping up with market value. I know it's not going to be popular, but we need to be fair too. So I would say either 2,200 or 2,500.
I think at this time, it would probably be appropriate to make a motion then with your recommended amount and do a vote or roll call vote. Unless there's further discussion, it's totally up to you.
Before we do that, I would like to get a consensus as, I think there's an agreement that we're going to recommend raising the rate for 2026. So then it becomes to Anita's comment, are we making it to market rate? If it's 2,500, I think we should go to 2,500. If we're trying to be gradation, then 2,200, but it's, 25 is doubling almost the amount. And so I guess I would ask, what are people's thoughts as to what is the amount, and then we should vote on recommending that amount.
I feel the amount should reflect, like, obviously now's not the time, whether or not we're gonna switch to slips, but whatever we land on, I feel should also be the slip price, hypothetically speaking. I don't think it's necessary to raise it to a level and then reduce it the following year if slips become the norm. So so that would be my thought.
All right, I'm sorry, Jacob, I'm confused. So slips are different than lifts?
So we're obviously charging, I think lifts are a luxury item. They are a premium item based on this one thing we got here that's $6,800 for a summer. I think we're doubling it for a lift seems fair. Doubling it for a slip might seem slightly on the higher end.
But when we move to a slip, I think we then reevaluate.
You would, yeah.
Evaluate
All the
it
fees would be
everything starts from
reevaluated at
scratch.
that point. Totally
It's okay
different
if we go down.
infrastructure,
Okay.
different management style. Perhaps you look at lease lengths and stuff like that, but that would be the appropriate time to discuss it.
Yeah. I think we have to stick with going with what we know today, and that's
Yep.
lifts. Lifts for sure for 26 as well, we know.
And if for some reason they aren't, we would void that and design it to fit accordingly. But this is, like I said, banking on the assumption that we would have the same infrastructure for next year.
So would other people on the Parks Board be amenable to raising it to 2026 by $1,000, and so it'd be $2,325? Sort of splitting the difference between 2,500 and 20.
I think that's fair. I would feel that's acceptable.
So we're okay with that? Do we have a motion to accept raising the 2026 fee for seasonal boat lift to $2,325?
I'll make a motion.
Excuse me, are you putting a CPI on there then too? Do you want to?
No,
No,
I'm
we'll
not
do
putting a
that when
CPI.
we-
For right now, I'm just saying this is going to be, and we'll worry about that
Yep.
when we get slips and we get other things going on. But just for clarity and crispness, we'll make it one amount. So,
2325, that's Jacob's
I
motion.
make a motion for 23-25 for the 2026
I s-
season.
for lifts,
For lifts, correct.
yes.
I would second that motion.
We have a second from Anita. So, all in favor? Anita? Aye? Aye.
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 All right. So motion is passed, raising the price for the list in 2026 to $2,325. So thank you very much. And Eric, I assume you'll send out a note to these people, that's what's going to happen, that our lift owners
Yeah, so
now-
how this works at the end of season 2 is there's an end of season reminder reminding those that, hey, October 15th is our seasonal deadline. That's when you have to remove your boat. I send those out in about September. I'll have to consult with other city staff if this needs city council approval or not. I would anticipate it probably would. So I'll keep Parks Board updated on how that works.
Okay.
But these renters would be updated of it.
Right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. So then now we're moving on to anything else we got in the park, fees?
If you want to take a look at shelter reservations, you can. Boat lifts was my priority to take a look at and reassess. So if you want to look at shelter reservations, if you think they're fine as is, that's fine as well. Or if you want to reassess shelter reservations, I would probably look at them all across the board, like, hey, we're in favor of raising them $15, and it would just be all the shelters across the board. But totally up to you guys what you would like to look at next, if anything.
I would suggest that we propose raising them by whatever the inflation rate is. So,
That's hard to determine. What I would say is probably take a look at a dollar amount. So if we,
but I mean, then change it to a dollar amount. So
Yeah.
if we're looking at $75 and let's say inflation is 5, so raise it $5 or 10 or whatever.
yeah, it would be easier to ask for a percentage though, I think for my, for Parks Board recommendation perspective, I would say if you provide me like a percentage that you would like to increase it or a
I'd say
dollar amount.
5% then.
5%.
That's what I say. Anita?
Was
Just
it,
question the- sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
But then doesn't it give you like dollars and cents? It's like $77.50. Don't you want a round number?
Yeah, that would be ideal, would be a round number or nearest $5 or something like that would be the easiest. So I would say like, would $10 be appropriate? Would $25 be appropriate? I'm not quite sure. That would be up to you guys to discuss.
But a round number would be easier, I think.
Absolutely.
I would personally like to see just kind of synchronicity amongst all the numbers. I feel $85 for each of the large shelters, $25 extra for each non-resident. Seems like it'd be very simple. So that means Commons would go up 10, Rotary and Wallace would go up $25 each. I would leave the Sandy Beach Small Shelter as is. I would increase the non-resident to 75.
Are you making a motion on this, or?
Are you
Well,
just talking about?
This is just my.
Yeah,
Second.
and let's get clarity as to all the things that, the numbers and what we're talking about.
Yeah,
So let's,
so-
Anita had a question or a comment?
Was it in 2022 that these were last adjusted, or was it 2021, or?
They've not been readjusted since my tenure here, which has been since 2021. I'm not quite sure when's the last time they've been reassessed.
So prior to 2021. All right, thank you.
And I believe it was prior to COVID, so
Okay.
it's been a while.
Can I ask what the rationale is for having a fee? Meaning, is it intended to cover hourly rate for cleanup afterward?
I think it's just generally the amenities that you're getting with each shelter was the thought process behind it. I'm not sure how it was really drafted.
Okay.
You know, I wasn't in the drafting process for this. But I think it's generally what are you getting for each rental? So we look at Wallace Park for tournament or game events. The expectation there is that you're getting 2 flush toilets that are on the same thing. You're also getting electrical access, stuff like that. Our Sandy Beach small shelter is literally just that. It's a sunshade. You're not getting electrical. You're not getting anything else for it. So I think that was the intent behind it, but that's just an assumption on my part. And then also just the general size, like, you know, Rotary and Wallace are the same size, but then the Sandy Beach small shelter and large shelter are changing accordingly. The large shelter does have electric, so that's kind of the fluctuation behind it. I like Jacob's thought process of let's take things that are all generally the same size and make them the same price. Kind of makes sense to me.
Although I like the
One more
premium on
comment.
Sandy Beach, though. I'm sorry.
What we do have on our new reservation system as well is we actually have the amenities of each shelter listed, like how many picnic tables come with it, is there electrical access, is there not electrical access. So that's all in a reservation system, so the actual renter would be able to figure out what do they need and does this shelter meet that? So,
Question there, does the Wallace Park Tournament game event, does that include having the ball fields?
not at all,
prepared?
totally
Does not-
separate.
Does not include,
Nope,
okay,
not at all.
okay.
So let's go back to like, kind, and quality, and 'cause I think Jacob's idea is, you know, very valid, that, but I also think that the Sandy Beach amenities are more of a premium. So I think we should, you know, price those as such. So if we go back, and I'm just gonna go down the line, the Commons Park Band Shelter, I think $75 is underpriced for that. I mean, it's centrally located, so I would say that would, I think it'd be very valid to go $100 on that. And then for the non-city, 120 or 150.
150, okay.
I mean, these are just proposals. The Rotary Park, I would put that up to,
We should really make a motion like this then. I mean, you're making a motion that these are your prices, then we can debate it if we want to change them.
Yeah.
yes, okay, I make a motion that we
Okay,
change prices as noted.
as you're going, okay.
All right.
So you got 100 for the city resident, 150, now you're at the Rotary Park.
Right, and the Rotary Park, again, same thing, I think it's a quality park, but I would put that to 75. And the non-resident, I'd put that at 100, would be my proposal for Rotary Park. Wallace Park, same thing, I'd go 75, and I'd go 100.
How much for non-residents in those?
100.
100.
Oh, excuse me.
And then on the Wallace Park, going with Eric said about having 2 restrooms and such, which is, you know, they have to be clean, they have to be this or that. I would put that to 150 for city residents, and I'd put that to 200 for the non-city residents. The Sandy Beach Large Shelter, I'd raise that to 100. I'd raise the non-resident to 150. And on this Sandy Beach Small Shelter, I would raise that to just again for consistency, I would maybe keep that at $50 and keep that, and then put the non-city resident to 75.
Want me to go over that then? So your motion is for the common parks, I'll just do the residents first. 100 for common, 75 for Rotary, 75 for Wallace Park, 150 for Wallace Park tournament game events, 100 for Sandy Beach Large, and 50 for Sandy Beach Small.
Yes.
And for out-of-state, or non-city, excuse me, Commons 150, Rotary 100, Wallace 100, Wallace Park Tournaments 200, Sandy Beach Large 150, and Sandy Beach Small 75.
Yes.
That's the motion, okay. I'd second that motion.
Okay.
Just,
Question?
yes.
I haven't rented a shelter at any of our parks or other parks, so are these rates, the proposed new rates, kind of in line with what you would expect of like-kind
For the
parks in other
amenities,
cities?
yeah, for the amenities that they have, they're about, yeah.
Okay, so the proposal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, there are shelters that are substantially more expensive to rent, but then also you have a lot more amenities at them.
Okay.
So if you're renting a picnic shelter, these are about
Going
common.
rate? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just going back for us having family reunions in
Yeah.
similar sized towns and stuff like that. That's kind of the rates that you're getting. And if you have the one that has the fireplace and has the restrooms, they go up.
What is Corth Park? They know Corth?
I'm not sure what Corth Park is off the top of my head, but with Corth Park, you do get same thing, like designated use for it. You get the concessions area with it, stuff like that. So I would anticipate it would be higher.
Anita,
Just curious.
yeah,
I think Corth is about $240 because someone recently checked into that for
Okay.
this year.
So then you look at our proposed rates for here, and then you look at Corth Park's amenities. It's
yeah.
About
And
comparable,
Corth
really.
Park has the restrooms and such, but, yeah. But,
Yeah.
so could we go with the proposal that Mike reiterated that,
I seconded your motion, so now we can discuss it if you want.
yeah,
I agree. I would vote, I think that's fair across the board.
okay,
Yep, I agree. I support it.
right. Anita?
I agree, I think it looks reasonable.
So we have a motion, we have a second, so let's have a vote. Anita, your support? Yay?
Yeah, yay.
Yay?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you very much. Motion passes to raise the rates as noted in the proposal. So thank you very much. And so we will now move to announcements. Item number 7, any announcements from anyone?
first farmer's market is this Wednesday.
Thank you. Just a quick question on that one. Is increasing, decreasing? Is it going to be in the same places?
Yeah, so I spoke with Raina, with Legendary Lake Mills. They will be having a new market manager this year. It's gonna be the same location, that centralized sidewalk with vendor drop-off locations on Madison and Lake. It worked really, really well last year. So we're gonna continue as is.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to creating the next meeting agenda items, item 8. So we already have one that we're going to have a discussion on the actual restaurant concession food truck.
What I would say, this is my recommendation, is let's confirm our layout and then we talk about uses and everything afterwards. So if we finish our concept design, we can kind of finalize that as much as possible, and then you can flesh out the uses for them, some potential conceptual ideas for it. So that would be my thoughts. I'm going to prepare to bring 1 to 2 updated concepts with what was discussed tonight. If we could finalize those and get that down to 1, that would be the goal for the next meeting regarding our concept plan. Now, the uses behind them, I think, like I said, would warrant a separate, almost a whole meeting in and of itself. But if we could finalize the concept or near finalize, that would be great.
Right,
And that's
so-
just layout. That's not uses or anything like that. We're just talking about general proximity and where they fall in the park is what I would need.
So we're looking for the agenda to be under new business, review city council resolution, Sandy Beach developments, Sandy Beach concept B, May 12th. That's where.
Yep, that would be appropriate. Or what I'll do is continued conversation from May 12th concept or something like that.
Okay, all right. Yes, Anita.
I do have a question. So, we're under a time frame that's fairly tight, and maybe that's not for today's discussion, but we definitely want to have at least one opportunity for public input, and maybe 2. So how would that fit in with what we're looking at for future agenda items?
What I would say and what I anticipate is that June would be a finalized concept or near finalized enough to distribute stuff like that, request public feedback. My recommendation would be to hold a public information meeting sometime in June prior to your July meeting. Would be my recommendation. That leaves you with the July meeting to make decisions or recommendations from input received from the public information meeting. And then just a reminder, the due date to city council is August.
And would that input meeting, are you looking at, do you have specific, or not specific, do you have some ideas as to dates and would location? Would this be back down at Sandy Beach?
It'd probably be here for public information meeting.
Okay. So, but dates, potential dates?
I would just at this point say after your June meeting, which is going to be June 9th, after June 9th, and then prior to your scheduled July meeting at some point between then would be my recommendation. Because that way, instead of having two concept drawings, you ideally finalize it down to one. You can discuss the needs and wants of the community from there.
I agree.
Should we work on finding that date, knowing that summer is busy for a lot of people?
Yeah.
And get that date out to people, the public as quickly as possible? Because I think there will be a lot of interest, a lot of enthusiasm, hopefully a lot of support. I think that people will be excited
Yeah,
about
I
what we've talked about.
I think it's a good idea. I think before we leave here, we should come up with at least a date or two that we can,
Or through Eric, get it quickly.
Yeah, what I would say is, let me look at room availability as well, because that will kind of dictate
yes,
what we
wonderful,
have.
yes.
Let me find a couple appropriate dates between the June 9th meeting and the July meeting for Parks Board and throw a couple out to you guys, and we'll see which is favored.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Mary. Yeah.
Do you think it would be feasible to keep it on a Monday night, since some of us have other commitments on other nights of the week?
Ideally, yeah.
Okay,
I'll do what I can. What I can do is I can primarily look at Monday evenings.
Yeah. Thank you.
that sounds good, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Good. Thank you. All right, and then any other agenda items besides finalizing? Yes?
I have a couple. I think we need to get on paper the Christmas decoration schedule.
Okay.
And that's one. And I would love to further discuss the idea of putting a basketball court in place of the volleyball court at Fayetteville Park. I know it's seldom used volleyball court. Looking at the layout of the city, there's 2 basketball courts in all the city parks. One's in Brookstone, which is kind of inaccessible for kids. I think a more centralized basketball court in a city park would be beneficial. Memorial Park might be a possibility.
Due to the time frame, we're currently in our capital development process right now for 2026. So what my recommendation then would be is I can submit a general request for funds for 26 for that. It would be a ballpark estimate on what that would be. I have a generally decent idea to be able to come up with the pricing for the installation of a basketball court on the assumption that it would be at Fayetteville. I think it would be appropriate then for Parks Board to make a recommendation to City Council saying approve this capital request for your 26 budget, but that could be done after you have finished Sandy Beach.
Okay, yeah. 'Cause-
Time-sensitive stuff. If we prioritize the time-sensitive stuff, let's say at the October Parks Board meeting, you say, hey, this capital request was submitted, Parks Board recommends approval to City Council, I think would be good. And I'm just trying to wager time sensitivity with Sandy Beach stuff right now.
Because just looking at the volleyball court sitting empty, it kind of, stinks. And then just a centralized basketball court, I think would be good. Memorial would be another option for a centralized basketball court, but I don't know if that'd be in the realm.
Fayetteville makes a lot more sense to me because we really have unused infrastructure right there. The volleyball courts really aren't used anyways. It's generally the same footprint. It's a pretty low impact installation, honestly, for a basketball court like that. And I can get a general idea on what that capital request amount would be. But so I can, as long as the Parks Board understands, I can submit that as far as a capital request for 26 budget.
So
I can do that.
am I hearing that we'll put that as a future agenda item, but it won't be an agenda item for June?
No, I wouldn't need it to be for my purposes at least.
So, but I think we should maybe put that as future agenda
Yeah,
items,
okay.
put the basketball court in there.
And that would be the same thing, Tim, then for the review procedure for comprehensive outdoor
Yeah.
recreation plan. That would be down the line.
Yes.
At this
I
point,
think we want to
it's-
capture those, so we are consciously yay, nay, and where we're going to put it.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Thought process behind comprehensive outdoor rec plan is the assumption that you guys will use what remainder of 2025 we have to discuss it after Sandy Beach has been complete. But we're still kind of working on it theoretically because you're talking about outdoor recreation developments for Sandy Beach anyways, so.
Yes. And we've got the continuation of in there, and then we have all those agenda items in there right now, so for the next meeting. So any other things to add to the agenda for next week? If not, then this, number 9 on the agenda, next meeting is 5:30, Monday, June 9th, And 10 is adjourned. So at 7:59:30, we are adjourned. Thank you.